Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another round of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 5, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round number 4 of the 13-round calendar, and whilst the first 3 rounds, of course, were taking place over in what was either America, alternatively Japan, it is the case now the series starts its tour of continental Europe, and what further place, or better place we should say, to start things off in Europe than other at the British circuit of Oulton Park, a circuit synonymous with touring car, particularly a British Touring Car Championship or BTCC. It is the case the touring cars in that series are a little bit different from the touring car racing class or the TCR class, drive the cars that are being driven by our drivers, but the cars are close enough in terms of their nature, and indeed it is the case that plenty of racing on the cards tonight, with this being the second of the series sprint race rounds, where we have gone absolutely ram-packed schedule for you, and let's take you through that schedule times in British summertime, that's BST or UTC +1, as follows. In just under what is 12 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with our 15-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of race number 1, and it will be the case there that qualifying is going to be very critical given the fact that all 3 races are sprint races, and therefore there are no pit stops. There's not really strategy per se other than keeping it on the track and don't drop it off the circuit, and overtaking may be a bit difficult even at Oulton Park, and we'll talk more about on Oulton Park and what we can expect to see in due course. But after qualifying, we'll be heading into our first sprint heat 1, at what is 8 o'clock this evening, and that'll be a 15-minute race, no hold barred action all the way through, and then we will take a brief break before returning at approximately what is 20 past 8 for sprint heat number 2. And it is the case there, sprint heat number 2 will be just as intense, another 15-minute race, all in, no holds barred, with also a degree of a reverse grid thrown in there for good measure, and then after that we'll be wrapping up with what is the sprint feature, where we double the race time distance from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and that'll be at approximately 8:45 tonight, according to our schedule there. But things may be subject to change depending on how quickly we transition between the races, but still, regardless, it's an absolutely a brilliant amount of racing on the cards, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, it doesn't matter how long you've got to wait, as soon as we go racing, it's worth waiting for. Now, we should point out that in terms of this broadcast, whilst the broadcast itself is live, as I talk to you now, it is the case the race itself is not live. It occurred on what was a Monday at the start of this week, so back on the 1st of August. It is the case today is the Friday the 5th of the August, so therefore it's the situation whereby we're bringing you this as a post-round broadcast, but I, as your commentator and host, do not know what happens. I don't know who's on pole, for example, in qualifying. I don't know who wins, who gets caught up in incidents in each of the races. It's completely raw to me, and all I can ask is, if you're one of the drivers who took part in this round, do try to avoid any spoilers in the chat, not for myself necessarily, but for the guys and girls tuning in at home who'll be seeing this for the first time, and indeed they'll be looking forward to seeing how things go down. Well, it is the case in terms of who am I in the meantime. Well, my name is Paul Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit or TX141, depending on what media you follow me on, and it is the case that this broadcast is being brought to you via 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, on twitch.tv. That's twitch.tv/TX141. Alternatively, if you do go to youtube.com and type in TX141TX or Paul Walsh, you'll also find the broadcast there. But enough about me. Let's take a look at the season ahead and where we are to date in that calendar. As we can see here, it is the case. Our schedule made up of 13 rounds, and there can only be one winner in the respective championships by the end of it. Of course, we started off back on the 11th of July at Belle Isle, Detroit, and then we went to Laguna Seca to really complete the initial 2 rounds of the opening tour of the United States of America, before then making our way all the way across the Pacific Ocean to last time our previous venue, Fuji Speedway, on the 25th of July. That was a feature race round. It was a 60-minute race full of action, particularly at the front of the field and also right up there in the top 10, but even outside the top 10 there was battling left, right and centre. But today it is the case, as you can see there from the yellow sash across it, it is the case the racing having taken place on the 1st of August at Oulton Park, and well, this British circuit is no stranger to close racing in the touring car class, but indeed extends all the way up to the likes of Formula Fees and also the British GT Championship in GT3 class cars. And well, this circuit we'll talk about shortly, but what a way to kick off the tour of Europe. And in a week's time we'll be heading to Monza, the Italian circuit, the Cathedral of Speed, for a feature race round, before then another sprint round at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, and then back to Italy for Imola for a feature race, followed by Donington for sprint races. Well, my goodness, the organisers, they were not going to be coincidental in terms of picking which rounds were sprint rounds and making sure it was the British circuits to really give you that feel of British Touring Car Championship in terms of when we go to those circuits. And then that'll be Donington that wraps up the Serious European Tour, and on the 5th of September we'll be heading to the South American continent, and in particular Brazil, for Interlagos for a feature race. There'll then be a week's break before we return for the final 4 rounds, kicking off at the course the motorsport circuit, or known in full as the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, on the 19th of September, and that is perhaps going to be one of the fastest, if not the fastest, average lap speed circuit out there, if you don't include Monza in that conundrum. And there'll be 2 feature race rounds back to back of Mid-Ohio and Watkins Glen as the series comes back to the United States for its final 3 rounds, and it culminates in the special round, as denoted there by the pink-purple slash across it. Road Atlanta is where we bring the curtain down on the season, and well, we'll find out more details of what makes that round so special in terms of its rules and stratagems later on when we do get to it. But it is the case we've still got plenty of racing to go. We're nowhere near halfway there yet, and well, we don't want to wish any of it away. But as for our circuit for tonight, Oulton Park, where it is the case our drivers will be taking their driving machines around the international event with no chicanes. So as you can see here from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, this circuit is made up of 12 corners, and whilst it doesn't have necessarily all the chicanes that sometimes really do break up the racing, it is going to definitely be fast and furious with our drivers charging all the way through the sweeping right-hander of turn number 1, down the hill to turn number 3, and indeed that very tricky long left-hander of turn number 3, which will catch many a driver out, particularly at the start of races on cold tyres. And then we've got the run through the kink of 4, while drivers will need to lift off and then get set to break their way into the banked hairpin of turn number 5. There will be a long run through the right-hander of 6, completely flat out there, all the way down to turn number 7, and that's where we'll see our drivers reach their high speeds in the run from turn 5 to turn 7, before making their way into the final half of the lap from turn 7 to 10. We've got the double left-hander section of turns 8 and 9, the very tricky turn 10 right-hander, while drivers will have that double apex to deal with, and then the final major corner of turn number 11, which sees our drivers go over a hill or a small crest in the road and then down into a drop before rising out of the drop to the start-finish line through the left-hander at turn number 12. And well, I think this image doesn't quite tell you the full story of just how many elevation changes there are at Oulton Park over the course of a single lap. And this circuit, located in Little Butterworth in the Cheshire region of England in the United Kingdom, is a circuit which is much loved, as we said previously, for its ability to create very close racing. But this image can only tell you part of the story about the circuit, and I know what you'll be looking forward to seeing soon, and that will be some on-board fast laps in our qualifying session, and we'll give you plenty of those and really give you an insight of just how narrow and difficult this circuit can be, and also how the grass around it looks very close to a driver. In terms of the rules for tonight, in terms of setups, of course, this being an open setup series, it is the case our drivers bring their setups to each and every round. Car fuel loads have been restricted to 39 litres for this round, meaning that our drivers will have just enough fuel to complete all 3 races. Particularly, they'll have plenty of fuel for sprint heats 1 and 2, and they'll have just about enough fuel for the purposes of what is the sprint feature race, or race number 3. In the sprint races themselves, there's no pit stops expected, as we said previously, that's why they're called sprints. The grid for race number 2 shall be a top 4 reverse of race 1's results. So it is the case the driver who finishes 4th in race number 1, they'll be starting on pole for race number 2. Conversely, the winner of race number 1 starts in 4th place, and the driver who finishes 5th, well, you guessed it, they'll be starting 5th for race number 2. And in the race number 3, the grid shall be set as a top 8 reverse. So it is the case whoever finishes 8th in race number 2, they will be starting on pole for race number 3, and the same logic applies with regards to the rest of the order. Indeed, it is the case those reverse grids could be very pivotal to a driver picking up a huge sweep of points here today if they play it right. It's not the case you necessarily want to get one win and then lose out by finishing outside the top 10 for the other 2 races. Really, you want to be trying to finish inside the top 5 in all 3 races today. That will do you very well over the course of the proceedings. And in terms of instant points, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 9 or more instant points in a given race, and they shall be disqualified from the race if they accumulate 16 or more instant points, and the following bonus points are available over the course of each race. Firstly, there's 1 point for pole position in qualifying, there's 1 point for the fastest lap over all of the races, so it is the case whoever sets the fastest lap in race settings over all 3 races, they will get the point for that. There's not a point available for each race fastest lap, it should be pointed out. In terms terms of the 1 point for the Sublime Finesse Award, that is the fewest instants over the course of the entire round. So when all the instant points are added up over the course of the 3 races, there's 1 point for leading a lap in a given race. So it is the case if a driver leads a lap in race number 1, they'll get the point. And then in terms of the Naked Aggression Award, it is the case there is 1 point for the most overtakes over the round. So that's the case, the most overtakes made by a driver over the entirety of the 3 races here today at Oulton Park. But that's enough verbiage, that's enough rules, regulations and whatnot. Let's head back to the circuit and see our drivers as they're getting themselves finalised here. Indeed, we have some new drivers to introduce today, and it's always good when we've got more blood out on the circuit. Fresh blood as well, quite a few rookies taken to the circuit today, and we have been having some issues with our trading paint software, so you may notice some liveries haven't quite loaded as expected. So if you're wondering why it took us a couple of minutes before we got started with the broadcast compared to our normal start time of exactly dead on 7:30 this evening in the United Kingdom time, that's exactly why, because we've had quite a few issues with trading paints, and therefore we've been trying to get those results. So some of the liveries won't be visible at the moment, but hopefully they should be visible when we do go into qualifying. And if they're not, well, I do apologise in advance. But you see David Bauer here making his way down through turn number 2 and into 3 and taking a bit of grass there under braking into turn 3 and catching the car very nicely there, but he just can't quite keep it on the tarmac. But that could have been far worse as he goes over the bump in the grass. But going from a driver who's a veteran to a newcomer today, well, we do have the newcomer of Fernando Takahashi, who we can see here has added to the Audi RS3 roster. He's bringing the venerable German touring car machine, and what I do know, Fernando Takahashi, of course, from the middle of the pack Racing League Series, and particularly taking part in the TCR and also the GT4 Series of 2022, and it is the case that Takahashi taking his skills and craft now into this series, and he's been classified as a Delta driver, and also he's a rookie because it's the first time he's participated in an Alpha Touring Challenge season, and because of his I rating, it is the case he's been assigned to our Delta drivers, and we wish him all the best on his debut. We have also got joining us as of tonight Steve Hansel, who will be taken to the circuit in the Honda Civic Type R, and the privateer here rolling his way through turn number 1 right now in a very fetching pink and black livery there. Didn't quite see what branding was on the car itself, but as we see him make his way down the hill there, looks as though he's got OR on the front, Objective as well. Well, that may be a reference to a company that perhaps he works with or is supported by. But Steve Hansel as well, a rookie to the series and also being assigned to the Delta class. So it is the case, of course, he's racing in what would be your Pro-Am equivalent, if you will. And you can tell who is a Pro, well, sorry, an Alpha, we should say, the Alphas being effectively the Pros, and who is a Delta by the fact if you look there on the left-hand side of your screen at the timing tower, you'll see that the Alpha drivers have a little blue slash against their names. So between their current position number in the timings and their name, such as Micah Hendricks at the very top there has a blue slash. Meanwhile, is the case on Deltas, and Steve Hansel being a prime example here, P20 in that timing tower, well, he's currently got what is a purple pink slash between his name and his position number, and that means he is a Delta. So that will clarify in terms of who's who in terms of the Delta and the Alpha Championship. And do keep in mind that whilst all our drivers earn points from a single championship points pool in terms of their finishing positions, and that's to motivate our Delta drivers to make moves on our Alpha drivers when they think they've got the pace to do so, or they've got the chance to do so. It is the case that we have an Alpha Championship up for grabs and also a Delta Championship trophy up for grabs come the end of the season. And we've also got a number of teams drivers out here as well. But as we see Hansel making his way through turn number 11 and the checker flag comes out in this practice session, we've also got here the newcomer of what is, and do forgive me if I pronounce the American driver's name wrong, Paul Milauchik, as he makes his way there through turn number 4 before he's briefly taken away from the circuit for qualifying. So it is the case we will introduce Paul very shortly as we now head into this qualifying session. So it's 15 minutes and our drivers will need to do everything they can in order to set their best possible lap times here, as it is the case that we are expecting it to be a very, very tricky qualifying session, all in and all the way through. But right now, as we wait for drivers to make the way out, we see Robert Abrams here once again, the lead driver coming out the pit lane. And Robert Abrams, of course, your championship leader overall in the standings going into tonight. And well, it was a difficult time last time out at what was the Fuji Speedway circuit, and it's actually see Abrams' advantage in the championship slashed to only 2 points, where he went into round number 3 with a 7-point advantage, but he's lost a significant amount of it. But to be fair, it was the case that there was a lot of back and forth, and the big name that really took to the top of the field was Micah Hendricks, who led the way at Fuji. And well, we will have to wait and see whether Abrams Day can recover what points he lost at Fuji Speedway. But as he makes his way on down here and up towards what is turn number 7 in that very long charge, of course. At this point in time, Abrams will be just focusing on doing what he can rather than panicking about that championship at the moment, because there is a long amount of mileage to go before we do get to that situation whereby the points really do become critical. Although, to be fair, you want to get every possible point you can in the championship, but it's the case that this early on, the focus is more about enjoying the racing and not really doing the mathematics. It's normally when we get to the final third of the championship, so we're really thinking about round 8 onwards, where you'll start to see some drivers take a bit more of a tactical focus on what points they can grab with each and every round. But with Abrams making his way into turn number 11, we ride on board with him as he takes us around for the opening flying lap of this qualifying session at Oulton Park. So making his way through the kink of 12, completely flat out and across the timeline down towards turn number 1. He'll look for his brake mark on the left-hand side. They're using the advertising hoardings, and as he comes down the gearbox into third gear, dropping into the depression, accelerating out. Now it's a charge down towards turn number 3, but not before. Flat out for the right-hander at 2 and into the drop, and he has to brake early here. It looks like he broke very early for the corner, but that's because it's a downhill run, and on top of that, it's a massive bump in the road, which if you brake on the bump or after it, the car will be launched off the circuit, and you don't want that to happen. But now charging out of 3 up into 4, we'll hear a lift. Indeed, there is a lift there in 5th gear before now charging up into the hairpin of turn number 5 and braking hard here on the gearbox at 100 metres from the corner. And as he comes down to 2nd gear, charging back onto the throttle, just at corner apex, they're using the road camber to push the car around, and now through the kink of 6, and it is the charge all the way out towards turn number 7. Normally here, if we're running the full international lap, we'd see the first chicane, not to see it, and you won't be seeing the second chicane coming up shortly. We do see the brake boards here on the left-hand side, but our drivers will not need to brake, instead they charge all that to turn number 7 and brake at that 100-metre board, and through 7 there, one of the fastest corners in 4th gear. He just keeps 2 wheels on the road about Abrams, and as he charges through 8, up the hill, and now into the kink of 9 before braking into turn number 10, and braking here about 70 metres from the first apex. You see a double apex here when you want to try and stay as close as possible to the 2 apexes and get a good run through. It's a nice one there by Abrams, now heading down towards what is turn number 11 and braking there at the turning board. That's about 80 metres from the corner, and in the race he'll be braking at about 100 metres, exits the corner there into the depression, up over the ridge through turn number 12, flat out and to the timeline. And what is that lap there for Robert Abrams? Well, as he crosses the line, it is the case he sets a 35.1, a nice lap there, and as the fuel comes out the car, you can imagine that Abrams will be looking to go a little bit faster. But as he comes charging down the hill once again, it is the case we do look from him to what is our newcomer, who we were talking about only moments ago, and that was of course Paul Milochuk, as we see him making his way out of turn number 11 and through 12, and as he rolls his way on through and heads on down, it is the case the Delta driver here in a rather fantastically coloured liveried Hyundai Elantra, we should say. That's, I almost minced my words up and say it was going to be a Honda Elantra. Well, goodness me, I need to get Honda off the brain. It is the case he comes down through 2 and into 3. We wish him and all the other newcomers all the best, of course, on their debuts today. But right now, looking quite good out there. That last lap for him at 35.46. And, well, we do see there in the Twitch chat, and we say hello to Sweet Lerb, and I hope you're doing well, Lerb, and commenting, this is the most British grey sky I've ever seen. Well, you wouldn't be wrong. It is the case. It's quite early in the morning local time at the circuit when the racing took place. It is the case it's about 11 o'clock in the morning, and well, a very cloudy sky, very different from the weather we're actually having in the United Kingdom right now, it must be said, albeit I think up towards the central belt of England, and that's where of course Oulton Park is. It is north of London, quite a bit north of London, up in Cheshire. It is the case there has been a lot of clouds. I think this weather's actually quite accurate, albeit a bit foggy, that cloud coming quite low to the circuit, and with it is the case that right now drivers having to deal with a little bit of a visibility challenge, and that may just upset some drivers in terms of looking for their brake markers. They may have been expecting splendid sun, but instead they get British grey clouds instead. But as we see Malchek here making his way through what is turn number 10 and down towards 11, he charges, and it is the case that we do cut from him over to Connor Acatella, who right now, well, it is the case that Acatella continuing to really charge around in that Hyundai Veloster. It is the case that he has been the dominant tour de force in the Delta class since really emerging on the scene at Laguna Seca after Wiley Cox's win at Belle Isle in the season opener. Acatella coming back in full force, and right now currently on what is the Delta pole, if you will, or P12 overall, on a 35.11, and as he makes his way down through 2 and into 3, it is the case he's going to continue to try and find that lap time where he can, and we are expecting the majority of our drivers to be looking to try and get into the 34s here today. We may see 1 or 2 33s over the course of the qualifying session, but it's not long left, and whilst it is the case we do arguably still have just over 9 minutes, that's not a lot of time when the lap time here is 1 1.5 minutes, and you've got to work very hard to find space out on circuit at Oulton Park, because as you can see from the circuit radar in the top right corner of your screen, as our drivers continue to roll their way round here, it does become a little bit of a traffic jam. And well, what's not a good traffic jam in the United Kingdom on a motorway? Of course, this is a motor racing circuit, it's not a motorway, and our drivers will need that clear space. Although if they can get a tow in the run from turn number 5 down towards turn number 7, that could benefit them about 3 to 4 tenths of a lap. But then they've got to deal with the fact that later on, when they come through the kink of 7, as we see there, and now up through turns 8 and 9 and into 10, then being in that dirty air could be quite punishing. But right now, Akatela won't be thinking about that. He's got a lot of clear air in front of him, he's got clear space behind him, no pressure, and he's absolutely charging through each and every corner as he makes his way down towards what is the right-hander here of turn number 11. As he does, as we see Lauzon improving there to a 34.510. It is the case, Lauzon getting that lap delivered and up to P9 in the overall standings. Meanwhile, our Alpha driver here of Akatela coming to the line, and as he crosses the line, that's a 34.93, so he's broke his way into the 34s, and he's still got some time out there, I reckon, in that number 55 car, but definitely looking hooked up as he makes his way on around. Now, as he charges on through here, it is the case that we do look from our leader in the Deltas to what is Micah Hendricks here, going from one Veloster to another, and Micah Hendricks joining, and we should point out, you can see that he has joined up Blue Flag Motorsports as of this round, so it is the case he is racing for the team alongside some of his peers. And well, I think it is the case that right now Hendricks feeling a little bit charged in the fact that he has joined the team, and really I think the team very happy to have Hendricks with them. And it is the case, of course, after that stellar performance at Fuji, he's looking to back it up today with 3 stellar performances here at Oulton Park as he goes charging on down through turn number 1. Now, if you are tuning in the YouTube, alternatively in the Twitch chats, and it is the case you do have access to the chats, don't be shy, feel free to say hi if you've got the capability to do so. And it is the case, do let us know who you're cheering on here, or which cars you're thinking will go well. It is the case, as you're seeing at the moment based on our cameras at Oulton Park, you can see how narrow this circuit is in terms of the road surface. Doesn't really provide too much space for overtaking, and that means that track position is going to be critical. So this qualifying session will definitely have a major impact in terms of how the racing will play out. Overtaking is possible, however, and the fact that we haven't got any of the chicanes after the turn 5 hairpin, that will really change up the order in terms of we'll have massive slipstream battles in the run down towards turn number 7, and we see Hendricks here making his way through 6 and down towards 7, and with our drivers reaching speeds heading up towards what is about 130, 140 miles an hour by the time they get to this braking zone here of turn number 7, it will be the case that they'll all be thinking about those potential slipstream overtakes. But it's a very narrow apex at turn number 7, so those moves have got to be done as soon as possible. As we say hello there to Micah Hendricks himself in the YouTube chat there, known as Assuming One, and I hope you're doing well, Micah, as we do now look to Matthew Shepka, or Matt Shepka as he's known in short, and it is K. Shepka here chasing on after one of the breakfast for dinner machines, and well, it is the case in that Honda Civic. I think he'll be grateful for every extra mile an hour he can get in the tow of the Elantra in front of him, and well, we're trying to figure out who that is in front. We're not quite sure that we haven't really got a door number at the moment, we haven't quite caught it on the camera, but he will be appreciating that he's having a little bit of a buff in terms of that straight line speed thanks to the draft, and this may just help Shepka as he makes his way down around his previous best being a 34.31, and as he rolls his way there through what is turn number 10 and down towards 11. A lot of our cameras being obscured by the trees here, and it is of course the fact that we're right in the heart of the British countryside. We're not in the middle of the city, unlike say Belwell for the season opener, nor are we in the middle of the desert compared to say Laguna Seca in Monterey County. It is the case that we are right now in the British country, and as we see here, Shepka does set a personal best there, and that puts him at P6 on a 34.271 as he rolls his way through turn number 1, and looking quite good as Shepka. As meanwhile we do cut from him to one of our Audi drivers, and in particular to Corey Fluke, and of course as he makes his way down towards turn number 7. The Audi RS3, not a popular car choice, it has to be said, but we are seeing a couple more individuals join in the Audi RS3s, and there has been a bit of talk from some drivers down the paddock about considering switching to the Audi RS3 later on in the season when the car swap is permitted, and of course that's after the halfway point as I'm to understand it. But it is the case, the Audi hasn't really gone too strong so far, and will Corey Fluke and also Takahashi today will try to prove the doubters otherwise, but we do look to Corey Fluke here as he rolls his way through turn number 11, and as he does, we right on board as the Audi Sport Customer Racing driver heads on to another fast lap. And well, as he heads down towards turn number 1, watch how many gear shifts he'll have to do, and that's the Audi's weakness, of course, that very tightly strung gearbox. He makes his way into turn 1, and as he rolls his way through in 4th gear, very nicely composed there in fact for Fluke, a very smooth line, he now heads on down towards turn number 3. charging through that Brian King and braking just before the bump in the road. You can see that bump of that drop in the road, if you will, and as he comes through turn number 3, very nicely hooked up there, using plenty of apex curve, which as a driver you're encouraged to do. You're encouraged to ride that apex curve as much as you possibly can. And now heading into turn number 4. In this case here, a lift and then stabbing at the throttle to try and get some turn in the car, but I think losing a bit of speed there as he now rolls his way into turn 5 hairpin, and as he does third gear here, charging out of the hairpin and using full exit width of the corner, and now heading all the way up towards turn number 7, completely flat out at this point, up into 5th gear, and now heading up towards turn number 7. He'll be reaching 6th gear before he gets to the corner. You'll see him shift very shortly, and well, he goes into 6th. Looks at his brake mark and left that 100-meter board, coming down the gearbox to 5th gear, where other drivers will be coming down to 4th potentially. A nice line there from Fluke, it must be said, really hooking it up well. And as he comes through the kink of 8 and through the kink of 9 very shortly, rolling the car through, and now heading up towards turn number 10 and dropping down to 4th gear, and you can see they're having to stay in a higher gear to avoid bouncing off the rev limiter. And as he exits in 5th gear, you can hear how the car's bogging down as it goes up into 5th, and that's where the Audi's really losing out by comparison with the Hondas and the Hyundais, in the fact it just does not have the gearbox at these circuits where there's an emphasis on those corners and those gear changes. But as he makes one out, it's not a bad lap, and in fact Corey Fluke there, a very smooth lap, but that is going to put him up to P22 there. Well, 1:35.862, a nice lap from Fluke, and well, what else can he achieve now with only 3 more minutes on the board? We are running low on time as we say hello to Auguste Blondel in both the YouTube chat and also I do believe Oulton Circuit, and here he is. It is the case as he makes his way down towards turn number 4, run through the left hand. Here is the Blue Flag Motorsport driver, much like well their newcomer within the team Micah Hendricks, looking to do his utmost within his respective class, and currently P2 in the Deltas, P13 overall in the timing standings. It is the case here, the Elantra driver definitely trying to deliver, but Acatella has found a way to deliver a lap that's 1.5 tenths faster, so it is looking as though it's going the way of Acatella, and 1.5 tenths is something that can be closed down quite nicely at Oulton Park when you hook up the lap perfectly. There is still potential out there, but I do wonder where it's the case that Blondel may be thinking more about the race now, or whether he can take a last-ditch attempt at seizing that Delta pole position, albeit it's not worth any points to Delta pole position. It is the case the overall pole position is what awards the point in qualifying, but still, if you can take pole in your class, all the better, and it gives you that little psychological boost, and also gives you the confidence knowing if you can deliver on 1 lap pace, you'll have the pace in the race to lead your respective peers and leave them in the dust. But right now, Blondel rolling his way into turn number 11. You can see the ceramic brake disc there on the rear of the car, really going red hot on the braking, and of course our Elantra drives really running a huge amount of brake bias towards the rear, and that's coming through. When they've got those tyres up to temperature, they'll normally start to move the brake bias more and more towards the rear, because the front tyres have got the heat in them, therefore they provide enough grip to offset that over rotation on the rear end of the car under braking. But it is the case, we do see Blondel making his way down to turn 3, not improving on that. That was a 36.2, so it's the case he's got some way to go to improve from his previous best, that 34.83. But as he heads on round, we do look from him to Giovanni Romano and another newcomer, and well, Giovanni Romano, who we couldn't introduce in practice as he was in the pit lane, here he is, and the privateer making his way through the right hander there of turn number 1 and racing for what is in other series, I do understand, Team Hugh Jas. And as he makes his way down towards turn number 3 here, Romano listed as a privateer, but that Honda Civic Tyre Power definitely showing the colours of the team he races for. And as he rolls his way through the left hander of turn number 3, well, we're looking forward to seeing how Romano gets on here today in a field which has been, particularly in the Alphas, and he's been assigned to the Alpha class. It is the case the Alphas have typically seen the Hyundai Elantras go very strong, but with Shepko and Romano P6, P7 respectively, you could imagine it may be the case that we could see a Honda creeping its way up onto that podium, or definitely into that top 5 tonight. But with less than a few seconds to go, it is the case. I think Mike Hendricks will take that pole position. He has gone to the pits, and indeed, with the 15 minutes complete, that is qualifying complete, and it is Micah Hendricks who will be starting on pole for the purposes of race number 1. So without further ado, let's take you through the grid. So, for the opening race of round number 4 of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 5, brought to you here at Oulton Park, it is Micah Hendricks who lines up on pole for Blue Flag Motorsports, joined by Robert Abrams from Yellow Flag Motorsports. It is the case the rivalry between the two of them goes on. Don't count out, however, Jerome Bajulaz and Francois Shink. They line up on row number 2 there, and really this top 4 has been very closely fought and battling all the way through the season so far, and any one of those 4 could pull off the wins here tonight. David Bauer and Matt Shepcott on row number 3, the breakfast for dinner driver ahead of the Torque Steer Racing driver. A strong qualifying session for Matt Shepka for Torque Steer Racing in the Honda. And then Giovanni Romano, the newcomer to the Alpha class, P7, joined by Logan McKinzie on that full throw in P8. On row number 5, we have James D. Carr for Breakfast for Dinner and Jon Lauzon from Beaver Buzz, with Daniel Smith and Connor Acatella making up your 6th row, and Acatella taking that effective pole position in the Delta class. Behind them on row number 7, the 2 Delta drivers are Gus Blondell and Daniel Sedino there, both qualifying well for Blue Flag Motorsports. And then we have Travis Hoare and Aaron Lahr lined up on row number 8, with Gurkan Demir and Paul Milajic starting on what is row at number 9. And then we have on row number 10, Steve Hansel and Fernando Takahashi. Behind them on row number 11 are Adrian Fedorowski and Wiley Cox. And on row number 12, we have Corey Fluke and Jesse Bodas. And then on what is our final row, we have Brandon Veres and Justin Rhodes. And I think Justin Rhodes has not set a qualifying time, and they're still trying to do work on the car to try and get it out there for the purposes of race number 1. And if not, it may be the case he'll be starting later in the proceedings, albeit in races 2 or 3. But a difficult start to the racing tonight for Justin Rhodes for Breakfast for Dinner. But as we look from what is our grid on the screen in terms of the positions to our actual grid as it begins to line up, it is the case that we're almost set to go here. And well, we have got the gridding process complete. We now wait to go racing. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 1 here at Oulton Park. And Micah Hendricks getting a slow start here. And Robert Abrams immediately going up the inside to turn number 1 and taking the position. And they all roll the way on through the corners at this point. Oh, goodness me, there's already been a bit of contact there. And that's Francois Shink being pushed a little bit wide. That's not Francois Shink. Yes, it is being pushed a bit wide. And he comes back into the pack there. And a bunch of drivers getting knocked out. We're hearing that Daniel Smith's had enough a bit further back. But it is the case he's brought it back together. But there's been quite a bit of elbows coming on now. And Daniel Smith is the one who's lost out the most as he now returns to the circuit all the way down to P25 after what was a reasonable start. But meanwhile, up towards the front here, we've got Micah Hendricks battling with David Bower, and David Bower going around the outside. Oh, goodness me, and Hendricks being knocked to the grass there and into the wall. And Robert Abrams meanwhile just running away with things, and it's the case that Travis Hoare is not your lead. That's a glitch on our timing screen. It is the case that Robert Abrams leads. Brandon Veres has been in the wall as well from what we're hearing. It has been a disaster for a number of drivers, but now as they make the way down towards turn number 7, it is the case they all start to settle into a formation, albeit I said they're going to settle down. Then Jerome Bagillas says, I don't feel like settling down, I'm going after David. Where it is the case he's going to definitely be going on the offensive was here, and it is the case that Micah Hendricks said to jump to the pits after that knock into turn number 5. Also Wiley Cox said to jump to the pits, my goodness, and Steve Hansel as well. But meanwhile, there's Matthew Shepka going up the inside there. Otherwise, Logan McKinzie, and McKinzie out of position, and Jon Lauzon gets on through as well as they make their way down towards turn number 11. And as they come charging down, Lauzon for Beaver Buzz is going to have to go defensive here into turn number 11, into the right hander, but he's going to hook it up, and McKinzie has to wait and loses 2 places through turn number 10. But after lap number 1, it's Robert Abrams who leads ahead of David Bower in P2. Jerome Bagillas P3, followed by Giovanni Romano P4. Then we have James Carr in P5, being chased hotly by Matt Shepka in P6. Then we have Jon Lauzon in P7, followed by Logan McKinzie P8. Then our leader in the Delta class, it is the case for Connor Acatella, who's had a flying start with Daniel Sedino then completing the top 10, followed by Gurkan Demir and Aaron Lahr P11, P12. But as they roll the way on through here, it is the case. I think we might have just had somebody who's had a bit of an off, unless I'm mistaken. No, I think it's just a glitch in our timing tower. It is the case that we've got a couple of drivers shaking up places. Well, in fact, I think there we have had Milajic get a bit wrong, but he's rejoined down in P16. It is the case he's had an off track at turn number 3, so quite the dramatic start here at Oulton Park. And a number of drivers in the pits, as we said. We've got Brandon Veres, Steve Hansel, Micah Hendricks, Wiley Cox, Gus Blondell, Travis Hoare, and Justin Rhodes all in the pit. And Justin Rhodes not taken to the grid for the purposes of this first race, which is very unfortunate. But meanwhile, for those who are out of the circuit right now and still pressing on, we still do have 19 drivers charging on around here in this first sprint race of today. And we'll have to wait and see whether it's the case that we've got plenty more drivers to come in just this one race, or whether it'll be in the later races. But regardless, as we look to our leader here of Robert Abrams, right now really trying to put some distance and daylight between himself and David Bower. David Bower, meanwhile, has got some pressure building from behind, and that is from Jerome Bagillas, who's got Giovanni Romano, who's still in the mix. And Giovanni Romano, having started in what was a very strong qualifying position of P7, has gained 3 places since the start. And David Bower right now does seem to be a little bit of the cork in the bottle in terms of the fact that everybody behind him is starting to bunch up, although I say that I think the Breakfast for Dinner drive is actually starting to pull away from Jerome Bagillas slightly. It's Jules not as close as he previously was, but as they head down towards turn number 3, it is the case of Jules will be looking to try and come on strong later on in this race. And the thing, of course, for our Lancia drivers is the fact that in these sprint races, the tyres will start to feel a little bit pained and pressured. Well, we'll have to cut that fault off very shortly, because it is the case that, oh, that's Shepka off, and also that's Brandon Vers who's off track. Now, I'm wondering, because Brandon Vers has already jumped to the pits once, whether there's a bit of an incident involving Shepka and Vers, because it is the case that Shepka was off there and Vers was off in the distance, but has had to make the jump to the pits. Was there a bit of an altercation? We won't be able to find out, unfortunately, due to limitations of running an iRacing replay file, as this isn't technically live. But it is the case that Shepka, after having a good start, has had it all go wrong, and he's holding on to the top 10 now in terms of running that P10 position. He's sandwiched between Daniel Sedino in front of him and was Gurk and Demir behind. And Demir right now, well, of course, his teammate from Torque Racing will be trying to help him along here, and they might have to consider swapping him if it's the case that Shepka's got damage to the car that's holding the car back from delivering its ultimate pace. And that is a very tricky situation to be in when it is the case you've got your teammate right behind you, because you don't want to hurt your teammate's race, but also you don't want to give up too easily for the simple reason they may be looking to try and get more points than you. But meanwhile, speaking of trying to get points, we've got a bit of an Audi rivalry here, and oh goodness me, Corey Fluke just stepping a wheel onto the grass there in the run through turn number 9 as he looked to go up the inside of Fernando Takahashi, and Corey Fluke with a whack to the wall. And meanwhile, Fernando Takahashi will be thinking to himself, well, I'm glad I didn't have to defend that one, because that may have been a bit difficult. But that goes to show you there, ladies and gentlemen, how close and how dangerous the grass is on the side of the circuit, and the fact you think there's a lot of whip to the track, and in actuality, when you go too wide into any corner or any section here, you can just put one wheel onto the grass and it will send the car to the wall very easily. And the walls are close in here. They look far away, but once you've lost it in one of these touring car racing class cars, it is the case they just completely spear off the circuit. And what with them being front engine front wheel drive, when they start to understeer, they understeer very well. And Fernando Takahashi right now, well, as he presses on, he has got the building pressure behind him, and also he's got the pressure of chasing down Adrian Fedorowski as they make the way through turn number 3. And that's Milošević behind, who's trying to get the position off of him for what effectively would be P4 in the deltas, which Fernando Takahashi's running in right now. And these two debutants tonight definitely looking to do well in sprint race number 1. But as they charge on through, we must look from them to Giovanni Romano, another driver who's having a very good start to his proceedings here today. And as he makes his way through turn number 7, he's fallen a little bit off the back of Jerome Bajulas over the last couple of laps, particularly on that last lap, losing half a second to Bajulas in P3. Here's Romano, but the 337 driver still showing that he's got what it takes to be running up towards the top end. And as he makes his way under the bridge there through turn number 10 and down towards 11, you can see James Carr by comparison starting to fall back a little bit as well. I think it is the case we could be seeing James Carr just settling down, trying to protect the tyres a little bit for later on in this race, given we're not even halfway through. Speaking of someone who's not going to be protecting the tyres, we ride on board with him here, and that is Matthew Shepka, because right now the Torque Racing driver needs to find his way past the Delta drives in front of him. And as they charge their way down towards turn number 1 and rolling on through here, where can he go for the move? Well, we know the Honda's the stronger car on the brakes. Well, I think he might be able to get the run, but it's going to be inside to outside through 2 and into 3. As we see there, Sedino on the outside. I think Sedino managed to take into the grass very slightly into the corner, had to back the car through fear of the car snapping on him. But Matthew Shepka gets that position done, and now as they make the way up towards turn number 5, it is the case. We can see how Sedino already tucking in behind and looking to go back on the offensive later on this lap potentially. Will he be able to go for it though? That will be the question as they roll the way up into the turn 5 hairpin. I don't think so at the moment. I think it would be wiser for these two to steer clear of fighting, and given the fact that just in front of them, only about 2 seconds up the road, it's Conor Acatella, Jon Lauzon and Logan McKinzie. And right now they'd love to add to that freeway fight over what is P6 on circuit. And here is that P6 fight as we look to Logan McKinzie, the yellow flag motorsports driver, at the head of this trio. And as he rolls his way through turn number 7 there, nicely smooth through, and as he heads up the hill, where it is the case here, we do have the Hyundai party, when it's 2 Elantras being pursued by a Veloster as they head in towards turn number 10. And that Veloster will continue to build, and that is Conor Acatella behind the wheel. And of course our Delta Championship leader right now putting in a very solid performance as things currently stand, and he'll be looking to try and take either P7 or P6 come the end of this race. The simple reason, more points, more glory as he carries his way through the season. Whilst he can't quite get to P4 to potentially get that reverse grid pole, if he can finish in P8 here and then finish P8 again, he'll be on pole, of course, of race number 3, that longer race, indeed a race with a few more points up for grabs. But as they head on through, we look from them to Daniel Smith, who right now is doing the recovery drive of the race, and he's trying to find his way up into P15. No way through at the moment for Daniel Smith as he rolls his way into turn number 1, but he's caught in this train behind Fernando Takahashi, and he does have Milauchek ahead of him. And as they make the way down towards turn number 3, they roll the way on through. And right now, I think Smith at this point has to be very patient here and see where he can get on through. Keeping in mind, of course, the Alpha driver chasing after the 2 Delta drivers in front of him, but they all earn the same points, but he'll want to make quick work of them if he can, because he'll be expecting he should be racing Aaron Lahr, who's up in P12. But of course, Smith, one of the drivers who really lose out on that opening lap, and Takahashi has to go defensive here, and this could really open up opportunities as we ride on board the gearbox of Takahashi's Audi as they make the way out to turn number 5. And as they come out of the corner and charge down towards turn number 7, we'll start to see the Elantra there and Milauchek get closer and closer as they head up towards turn number 7. Now as they do, Takahashi puts the car to the inside there and then parks it in the middle of the road as we head towards the apex. And look at this, Smith's going to take a look up the inside. It's going to be a brave move from Smith here as they roll the one through. Milauchek gets it a bit wrong and has to settle the car on the grass, otherwise it would have gone spinning off. But right now, good car control there for Milauchek, but it has released Daniel Smith up into P15, and Smith gets the one move done. But you can see that in the run to turn number 10 just how much speed is in that Elantra Milauchek as they head on through, but he gets it wrong there, does Milauchek. And as they head down towards turn number 11, I think Daniel Smith will feel safe now as they roll the way in to the penultimate corner and head on through to another lap. And by the time they get to turn 1, it's only going to be 5 minutes remaining, and Smith's got a few places still to gain as we see August Blondel there pulling over to the side. He is a lap down after the opening lap incident, and therefore his focus will be on recovering for the purposes of what is race number 2, just getting himself to the end of this race and getting a couple of points on the board. As it is the case, every driver who gets to the end of the race, so long as they complete at least over 50% of the race distance as set by the race winner, it is the case our drivers do get a minimum amount of points, and every point could be useful when we get to the crunch point right towards the end of the season. But Smith right now looking to try and go on the offensive once again for P14. And Takahashi gets a bit of understeer there, taking a bit too much apex curve at turn 4. He has to go defensive, and Smith, when we ride on board here, looking for that cutback and getting a very strong cutback here. But now it's the drag race as we see in front there, Aaron Lahr and Fedorowski going toe-to-toe. Fedorowski getting ahead in the battle for P12, but now we wait and see who's going to be able to out-drag the other. As it is the case, we have Fernando Takahashi alongside, although you can't quite see him on camera. Believe he is there on the inside. Aaron Lahr ahead, and oh goodness me, it's a heavy braking zone here. And as they roll the way through, I do think it's the case that Takahashi's still side by side, but in the end has to back out in the run up the hill. And as they do, it's the case that Takahashi now releases with Milauchek up the inside there, but he'll be on the outside into turn number 10. And as they head on through, it is the case that Takahashi losing 2 places there, battling for the 1 position. And as they head up towards turn number 11, as we see the fastest lap has just gone to Giovanni Romano. It's now 1:34.10. It is the case that Romano really putting in some fast laps early on. We're hearing that Daniel Sedino's had a bit of a horror incident out on the circuit somewhere, and well, where is Sedino? He's had to jump to the pits, and that is very unfortunate for Sedino, who at the time was running in what was, unless we're very much mistaken, he was running in at P10, so Sedino's had it go very wrong, and a lot of drivers will gain places as a result of that. As we wait and see what else could happen here in the remaining 3 minutes plus the final lap, we must look from this battle here for just outside the top 10 to the battle to be in the top 10. And it is the case that whilst Aaron Lahr here in P12, Adrian Fedorowski in P11, and then here is Gurkan Demir, who's quite a comfortable way away and just happily running on here in that P10 and not having to worry too much about the battling behind right now. I think he'll feel he's safe, albeit it won't be all the points he would have wanted to gain here in race number 1. But looking from P10 to P2, it is the case that David Bauer, the breakfast of dinner driver, continues to be pursued by Jerome Bajulas, but the 2 Elantra drivers have got something else to worry about, and the fact that Giovanni Romano is now starting to close up very gradually. You can see the Honda Civic driver there, really the unicorn amongst the rest of the herd, in the fact that it just doesn't look the same as the other Elantras, and of course it's not, because it's a Honda, not a Hyundai. But the point being, it is the case he's trying to get onto that overall podium come the end of this race, and right now with 2 minutes remaining by the time they get their way down towards turn number 3, it is the case he hasn't got long left to go. But to be fair, I don't think Romano will complain too much if he finishes P4, because of course he will start pole position for the purposes of race number 2 with that reverse grid in effect. Now you can see a little bit further back there, James Carr not really on the pace of what is our top 4 at the moment. James Carr, I think, just settling into room. I think he's aiming to get that P5 and get some good points on the board, not just for himself, but also for the breakfast for dinner team, given the fact we do have a team's championship as well as the drivers' championships, so every point does matter for the team. But a bit further behind, you see Jon Lauzon there trying to break away from Logan McKinzie and Connor Acatella. And Logan McKinzie, where is the case, after making 1 place at the start of this race, we haven't really seen him gain too much since then, the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver. And this is the theme we've seen over recent rounds from Logan McKinzie, particularly last time out at Fuji. It was the case that after making some early gains, it was just a bit of a no man's land for McKinzie out on the circuit. He wasn't really gaining, he wasn't really losing, and it seems that way at the moment here. Perhaps he's just trying to protect the car, just get himself into a bit of a rhythm, and we'll see more of him in sprint heat number 2. But it is the case that Logan McKinzie, compared to Abrams, who's really right now dominating at the front, McKinzie from Yellow Flag Motorsports, his teammate, is simply focusing more on just consistently finishing inside the top 10, which isn't a bad place to be. But meanwhile, speaking of places to be, here is Daniel Smith versus Federowski. Smith on the right of your camera, and Federowski rolling on through. Oh, goodness me, there's a little bit of contact there. Federowski saying he was going to go for it, but this is going to open up the heavens for moves, as we see Federowski losing out there for QC Motorsports, as it is the case. Milachek goes on through on the inside of turn number 8, and as they roll the wind up breaking, Aaron Lars going to have to defend from Takahashi as they make their way through the dreaded turn 10 corner, through the double apex right-hander, and heading down towards turn number 11. And as they come charging on through, they all line up once again. No more moves this time. They'll have 1 more lap to try and wrap up their positions, but it is the case that Aaron Lars definitely trying to get his elbows out here in amongst the Deltas as the Alpha driver, and I think it is the case that his Delta counterparts here are absolutely loving the battling, and for them, they're battling over P2 in the class out of the circuit, so it's a lot of pride up for stake here, as meanwhile Aaron Lars takes a peek up the inside of Federowski but can't find it, and our race leader by comparison, Robert Abrams, is already making his way onto that long back straight in the run to turn number 7. Such is the gap across the field right now, but to be fair, it's not about the gap, it's about the racing, and right now our drivers are delivering. As we hit the 15-minute mark, the checker flag will be out the next time they come on around, and will we see any more changes? Federowski continues to be hounded here by Aaron Lars as they make their way through turn number 4, but it is the case as they make the way under break, and I think Aaron Lars is going to look up the inside. He almost gets alongside us, the Torque Racing driver, but there's no way through this time, as we hear that Corey Fluke has had to jump to the pit lane after having an off track, and it's unfortunate for Corey Fluke, who has had a lot of difficulties, particularly that wax the wall earlier on. But going from difficulties to some with no such difficulties, it is the case. Our race leader right now is making his way to the final corner, and well, we will have to cut away, ladies and gentlemen, for as Robert Abrams rolls his way through turn number 11, it was a bit of a slow start for some of his peers, but not for Robert Abrams as he heads to the line. It will be Robert Abrams from Yellow Flag Motorsports who takes the win in race number 1 here at Oulton Park, ahead of David Bauer P2, who held on the end despite the pressure from Jerome Bajules, who comes home P3, Giovanni Romano on his debut race P4, a great job from him, James Carr P5, Jon Lauzon P6, Logan McKinzie P7, and Connor Acatella takes the Delta win in race number 1, P8 overall on circuit, ahead of Matt Shepka there in P9, and it is Gurkan Demir who completes the top 10 for Torque Steer Racing. But meanwhile, in the battle to be on the podium in the Delta class, Phil Mialchek completing that P2 position finish in the Delta class, P12 overall, brilliant stuff from him on his debut. Adrian Federowski coming home in P3 in the Deltas, and that was a P13 overall. Great battling, and indeed a lot of our novices here today, or our newcomers to the series, really showing their pace. And Fernando Takahashi as well, P4 in the class, P16 overall. Wasn't quite to be the perfect result, but he's still got plenty more racing to go, and I think he'll be thinking to himself that he can deliver further on. But in between them all, P11 was Daniel Smith, Milauchik in P12, Federowski P13, Aaron Lahr P14, Shink P15, Takahashi P16, Jesse Burders P17, Mike Hendricks P18 after that disastrous start at turn number 5 where all went wrong into the wall, and then Daniel Stiner P19, August Blondel P20, Travis Hoare P21, and well, as our drivers continue to make their way on through, and we see Hendricks here, the last our drivers to make his way to the line. We'll have Hansel home in P22, Corey Fluke P23, Brandon Vez P24, Wiley Cox P25, and Justin Rhodes not taken to the grid, P26 as Hendricks crosses the line. And now we do get ready for race number 2, as indeed our grid is about to be set. Let's take you through the grid once more, where it will be the case that we won't be able to quite take you down through the grid as I understand it, because we do have the replay file limitations, but it will be the case that we will have Giovanni Romano, who starts on pole, and he will be looking to try and convert that pole position into a win. And alongside him, however, it will be the case that he will have what is Jerome Bajula's there as we see them lining on up, and they'll be starting on that front row. Behind them, meanwhile, they will, of course, have the pressure of Robert Abrams and also what is... David Bow on that second row, but we do wait to go racing once more as we just get the gridding procedure underway. And we would look from the blimp camera, but as you can see, you can't really see anything from the blimp camera, and our guys in the blimp box are not too happy about that, it must be said. They're hoping that cloud would clear away. So indeed, we wait to go racing, looking down close to the circuit here, and well, it will be Giovanni Romano who gets us away from pole position very shortly. Lights out, away we go for race number 2 here at Oulton Park in round 4 of the ATC Championship Season 5 as Giovanni Romano gets a very good start there, and David Bauer meanwhile under pressure from Jerome Bajula, but Jerome Bajula tries to get the move done early after the struggle on what was race number 1, but he can't quite find it as meanwhile all our drivers charge on down towards turn number 3, and as they do, have we had anybody fall off the circuit this time? It doesn't look like. I think everyone's made it through so far. Yes, it is the case that everyone's safely made it on a round, or so it would seem. And well, with that, we can see Steve Hansel in P22. They're trying to get into the fight with Corey Fluke nice and early on, as meanwhile we look a bit further up the road and Daniel Steno battling side by side with Fernando Takahashi up into turn number 4. He gets that inside run, and Takahashi there on cold tyres in that Audi doesn't want to battle it round the outside to inside run. Understandable given how cold tyres can really compromise the car, but meanwhile everybody now in the charge, the long charge up towards turn number 7, and as they do, we've got battles and overtakes occurring already as we see Adrian Fedorowski here, the QZ Motorsport driver, trying to go on the offensive versus Francois Shink, but meanwhile a little bit further up the picture you can see how Jerome Bajula there was taking a little bit of a peek into turn number 7. They all come charging on through in long succession, but very fast and quick succession at the same time, and as they head through turn number 7, it's the case, oh goodness me, and Hansel there gets it a bit wrong, and it's a knock to the wall then. Hansel just losing the car a little bit into the corner, so he's got it wrong, and the first driver to fall victim to turn number 7, but meanwhile here is Giovanni Romano, who after that brilliant start, to be fair, a great launch from pole position, he's right now trying to lead this one away, and as they head to the end of lap number 1, let's take you through the field as it currently stands. It's Giovanni Romano who leads after one lap ahead of David Bauer by half a second. Then Jerome Bajula P3, followed by Robert Abrams P4, James Carr P5, Logan McKinzie in P6, being followed there by Jon Lauzon P7. Then Matt Shepka P8, followed by Connor Acatella, your Delta leader in P9. Then we have Daniel Smith in P10, as it is against, I think, Lauzon's home connectivity issues there. And then in P11 we have Francois Shink, followed by Gurkan Demir in P12. But meanwhile Aaron Lahr, he's back in a battle with his old foe, and that's Fedorowski there, but Aaron Lahr this time getting the move done for P13 versus Adrian Fedorowski, who right now is effectively your P2 driver in what is the Delta class. And I think Jon Lauzon's having a lot of connectivity issues, so it might be the case that does upset things a little bit in terms of our timing tower. We'll keep our eyes on that as much as possible. But Micah Hendricks again to the pits. It is another difficult start for Micah Hendricks, and also for what is there, Steve Hansel. It's just not going well for the pair of them here at Oulton Park. Really an upset to their proceedings, but meanwhile as we look to the field that are currently out there, we see Auguste Blondel here, who after that very difficult race number 1, which saw him finish all the way down towards the back, well, it is the case, having started from what was the very back rows of the grid, he's already made his way up to P90. He's going to gain another 2 places here, as that is, oh goodness me, and there's multiple contact there. I think Takahashi trying to take some evasive action, and Blondel getting caught with it, and that was the case that they all came together. Now in terms of who else was involved in that contact, well, I think Brandon Vez is very grateful he wasn't involved in it, but Takahashi definitely getting away with that one, Blondel not getting away with it, and that is a very sad second race. I guess Blondel, he'll be looking to try and come back in race number 3 to get some points on the board, some major points, but meanwhile one driver who's trying to get himself well up into the top 10 here to get some big points after a recovery in race number 1. Here is Daniel Smith and Torksteer Racing, and right now charges way out to turn 1, but he's got the pressure of Francois Shink behind him as they make the way down towards turn number 3, and as they roll the way through into the left-hander, the very long tricky left-hander you can see just in front, and then you've got Shepka and Acatella battling for position as they head down towards the braking zone for turn number 4, more the lifting zone to be fair, but as they come through, Daniel Smith are going defensive and also on the offensive at the same time up the inside of Shepka, who takes the grass, and the car goes loose on Shepka. He'll have to try and get that stopped, oh goodness me, and just coming back onto the road, and the brakes hook the car into the wall for Shepka, and that is not a happy day for Shepka. Meanwhile, we see Milacek, they're going up the inside of what is Jesse Bodas. Bodas was the driver involved in the three-way incident between himself, Takahashi and Blondell, but right now I think Bodas there was we went a bit wide by comparison. I think Takahashi and Blondell were the two main protagonists in that incident. It was the case that it was more of being a bystander for Bodas, but he loses the place there to Milacek for P17. But meanwhile, we look from towards the back of the field up towards the very front of the field with Giovanni Romano right now. Well, after that good start, he's under pressure here from what is Bauer and Brajulas behind as they charge down towards turn number 11 for the third time of asking. Now on the brakes here, of course, the thing that Giovanni Romano will have to his advantage is, given the fact the Honda has the greater longevity in the race in terms it doesn't wear its tyres down as rapidly, Romano can afford to push a little bit more in terms of from the start to the very end of the race. Meanwhile, Elantra drivers will have to think about when do they go for that push. Because if they push too early, they may just wear the car down a bit too much come the end of the race, and therefore be very vulnerable come the last lap or so. And we'll see that particularly in the sprint feature race in race number 3 of tonight. But right now, I think our Lancia drivers will not be too worried about that. But you can see the long train of drivers as they make the way down the run towards turn number 5. And as they do, it's Bauer behind, who right now finds himself really having to lead the charge in what is the Elantra pack, hunting down the Civic Type R in front. But as they make the way on through, it is the case that Logan McKinzie at the back of this group, I think, biding his time in that P6 position and waiting, stalking like a hawk here and looking for that opportunity to try and pick off some places should everybody start getting their elbows out. And of course, these cars heavy. It's not the case that it's Demolition Derby. They can't just smash one another off the road. But you can imagine that some drivers may start to get a little bit bold as the race goes on and start to do a bit of door rubbing or a bit of contact, and that may just upset a few, and that may lead to some places being gained. But speaking of places being gained, here's Daniel Smith on the right there in the Veloster, trying to go round the Veloster of Acatella, and he does go round the inside on turn number 7, and Acatella there battling for it, but 9 really, he doesn't need to battle too hard, because whilst he'll lose points for not finishing ahead of these Alpha drivers, it is the case his nearest competitor in the Delta class is Adrian Federowski, who's in P12. Well, Acatella drops down to P10 there, being passed by both what was Smith and Shink, but as they make the way down towards turn number 11, I think he'll bide his time and know that he can get that P8 back a little bit later on. Of course, Acatella, if he could get into P8 and finish there, he would start on pole for the purposes of race number 3, so he may want to fight this one back, but I think he's just being patient right now and waiting to go on the offensive a little bit later on in this race. But meanwhile, Aaron Lahr going on the offensive versus his rival, and these two, I think this is going to be a rivalry at Oulton Park for the entirety of tonight. Lahr versus Federowski. And they may be in different driver classes, but they're definitely racing in the same class of battling right now. And look who's trying to get in the mix as well. There's Daniel Cedino, who gets past Federowski, who goes quite slowly out to turn number 2 and down towards 3. And Cedino gets one pass done. Can he go for a second one here as we ride on board with the Blue Flag Motorsports driver here from the United States of America, and number 710 driver really trying to go on the offensive versus Lahr. And I think Cedino here has almost received a bit of motivation. Now, where's this come from? I don't know, but you love to see he's really trying to hound the back of Aaron Lahr here. And Aaron Lahr has just not really got any pace to break away, and to be fair, that's not to be besmirching his driving abilities. We know Aaron Lahr's a fast driver, but he just seems to be struggling when he gets into this lead position of being able to pull distance, not necessarily on the straights, it's through the corners. And as they make the way down towards what is turn number 7 here, it is one of those situations where you can see from the exterior cameras just how quickly they charge onto the brakes and roll the car through there, literally tapping the brakes and chucking it into the apex with a downshift of a good measure. But right now, Cedino definitely coming out fighting. He's going to try and look around the outside to inside cutback run here, but he over commits to the corner of turn number 10. He understeers a little bit deep, and that means that Federowski now will be looking for the opportunity to come back past his Delta compatriot, and in this case they're battling for P13, what is P2 in the Delta class. And as they head through the right-hand turn 11, they stay as they were. Federowski right now, the Canadian driver here for QC Motorsports, definitely waiting, and I think looking for that opportunity. As we clear the halfway points of the race, we now head into the second half, and well, it is battles up and down the field. And speaking up the top of the field, it is the case we see Giovanni Romano continue to lead this race, and remember, of course, it is his debut round as of tonight, and will the privateer definitely delivering for what is Team Hugh Adjust as he rolls his way through the left-hander at turn number 4 and heads down towards 5. But as he does, we see Jerome Vagilas there running in P3, and I think Robert Abrams at this point, there might be a little bit of growing impatience from Robert Abrams because he's starting to hound the back of Vagilas, and I think Abrams has been waiting patiently. I think he's been trying to save the car, but now as we're starting to head closer and closer towards the final 5 minutes, that final third, I think we'll now see the number 14 driver start to extend the legs on that Elantra and go on the offensive if he can, as they come down towards turn number 7. But as they roll the way on through, you may be sitting there thinking, well, why are they not overtaking one another? Why aren't we seeing too many overtakes? Well, here's the case at Oulton Park. When our drivers are very equal pace levels, sometimes does turn into what some would call a little bit of a procession. But do keep in mind right now, all of our drivers are driving on the very limit. And that's the thing about Oulton Park, is the fact you are pressured to drive so close to putting the car off the road that you can imagine one driver even makes the slightest of mistakes, it will all kick off. So don't think of it as a procession. Think of it as the case that everyone's on edge right now. And any moment like there, you can see Bajula just going slightly too deep into turn number 11, and that will give Abrams a run to one. Now, can he go for the move, or will he have to wait? Well, it is the case he may have to wait, but look at this. Logan McKinzie starting to sniff out a move there in the run through 12 into 1 versus what is James Carr in front of him. Couldn't find it that time, but James Carr definitely feeling the pressure as they make their way down the hill. Meanwhile, a bit further back, that's Shepka on a recovery drive here and going up the inside at Jesse Bodas at P18, and it is the case the Talk Steer racing driver, after that whack to the wall at turn number 5, he's got it all to do once again and just gradually rebuilding those places. And it's a very unfortunate second race for him, but we look from him at two Jerome Bajulas here, and you can see how Bajulas, by comparison, well, he has got that pressure absolutely booming. He goes a bit deep into the hairpin, and that's the thing now, as we ride on board here with Robert Abrams, as he almost goes to the grass there, and that's to take evasive action. I think it was the case he was going to follow Bajulas off circuit, and both of them were going to go for a little bit of grass trimming, which unfortunately isn't allowed in iRacing. It is the case they make their way down towards turn number 7 in the charge, but Abrams definitely now started to get feisty, and as they roll the way through turn number 7, chucking the car through the apex, literally using every bit of curb and every bit of width of the road, now heading up towards turn number 10. You can see how Bajulas gets the better run up in towards turn number 10, carrying a bit more speed. And as they head for the right hander, Romano at the front of this pack, he's starting to bunch the field up. Romano, I think, is struggling now at this point in the race as we look to the leaders, and here comes the move from David Bauer. He's going to look up the inside for the lead. Romano gives him the space. There's a bit of contact between the two of them. They're just a small tap, but they settle the differences, and David Bauer's going to try and have the run to the inside as they head across the timeline. 4 minutes to go plus the final lap. David Bauer looks at the move for P1 up the inside into turn 1. He goes through it. Romano tries to hold it round the outside. Romano goes onto the grass slightly, but uses the runoff area there. They're allowed to do it. They battle down towards turn number 3, and as they head into the braking zone for 3, Romano's not giving this up. He can outbrake the Elantra in the Civic Type R. That's what the Civic's good for. It can brake harder than anything else. And as they make their way down towards turn number 5, it is the case now. Romano's going to battle to the finish. They're literally neck and neck as they roll the way into turn number 4. And as they head on through, Romano, he's not giving this up. He is literally holding it left, right and centre. They roll the way through the corner, and as they come through turn number 5, you can see how Bajulas now is starting to be heavily pressured here. Oh, goodness me! And Bauer's off the road there. There's a bit of contact between the two of them. I'm not sure that was neck coat contact rather than door-to-door contact, but regardless, David Bauer's lost the positions, and meanwhile, Jerome Bajulas now being pushed through by Robert Abrams here. It's the case that Romano's not got the straight line speed, and the two Elantra drivers come on through there. A little bit of quick temporary teamwork, and Jerome Bajulas is now your race leader. But look at Romano here. Romano's not giving up. He's going to battle all the way round the outside to inside into turn number 10, into what is that P3 position. But he loses out there versus Robert Abrams, and you can see how it's the case that James Carr trying to come through. Meanwhile, Logan McKinzie, we said he was silent in race number 1. He's definitely not being silent now as he looks at a move up the inside there. David Bauer into turn number 11. They roll the wound up braking here, but David Bauer closes him to the apex there, and Logan McKinzie has to back out. He holds on to P6, but you can see how good it's been. Jon Lauzon there. I think he's trying to find a bit of space that doesn't exist. Well, Lauzon's very brave to go for it there in the run through 12, but it is the case as they make the way into turn 1 here. Now with only 2 minutes left on the clock, this battle for what is effectively the top 7. This is the top 7 you're looking at from P1 to P7, and not too far behind is Francois Shink in P8. It is the case they are separated by a margin of only 2.5 seconds, and any one of these drivers could win. And keep in mind, of course, that with the fact we have a top 8 reverse grid, that reverse grid is going to apply to all of these guys as they roll their way into turn number 4. But behind, you can see how it is the case that David Bauer having to try and hold James Carr behind. James Carr, I think, being forced to act as a bit of a rear gunner. But look, here comes McKinzie up the inside into turn 5, and as he rolls his way up the inside, it's the case there that Carr's not going to have anywhere to go other than put 2 wheels on the grass. Such is the way of the corner, and Jon Lauzon makes his way on through as well. But now, oh goodness, with a bit of contact between the two of them there, and Jon Lauzon, and also Carr getting very feisty as Francois Shink's also trying to get into the mix. He's a little bit further back there. He's about half a second off, but such is the gap in the fighting and how it's closing the rest of the field up to this top group. And as they make the way on up the hill, I agree with you there entirely, Logan McKinzie, in the YouTube chat. This is great driving from everybody involved in this top 7. And now it's the top 8 as we see P8 driver Francois Shink saying, can I join? Well, the Viva Buzz driver definitely can as he makes his way through turn number 10. Here we see Conor Catella and Daniel Smith also starting to close up P9, P10. Could we have a 10-way fight for the top 10 right at the end? Now, that would be something, but they will go now on to their final lap. There's not long to go. And indeed, as they roll their way on through, it is Jerome Bajulaz here, who I think unexpectedly for him has found himself pushed into the lead of this race by Robert Abrams. And now with the white flag waving, Barney flag waving the flag, it is the case that Jerome Bajulaz has to hold on for one more lap to take the win here at Oulton Park in race number 2. Can he do it is the big question. We will wait and see as we look back from his gearbox here. You can see that long line of touring car class cars. They're all on the hump. Bajulaz gets a very good run out of turn 3, it has to be said there. And as they make their way down into what is turn number 4, it is one of those situations whereby I think if Bajulaz can hook this up, he will not have to worry about winning this race. I think he's feeling quite comfortable right now. And as they roll the way on out of the corner here, it's looking comfortable as they head all the way down towards turn number 7. That gap there of 4.5 tenths, that's a good gap. It will come down in the toe with Robert Abrams gaining the speed, but I think Abrams may be a bit too far back to connect. And you see Bajulaz there doing a little bit of a switch back and forth as Daniel Smith, meanwhile, in the battle for P9, looks up the inside of Akatella, and Akatella says, I will just let you go. It's the case, I'm not really battling you. And I think that's smart play there from Akatella to look to finish P10 comfortably. But meanwhile, we look back to Jerome Bajulaz here as they roll their way through the corners, and as they head through turn number 10, Bajulaz now only has one more major corner to go, but he's got P2 and P3 right on his heels. He can't afford to miss his break point here. Will he nail it into turn number 11? We can see there Abrams has to cover from Romano, takes a P. That's going to give Bajulaz all the time he needs, and he's done it, ladies and gentlemen, for as he makes his way out of the final corner. It's Jerome Bajulaz from Beaver Bars who takes the win in race number 2 ahead of Robert Abrams and Giovanni Romano to complete the podium. Then David Bauer P4, Logan McKinzie P5, James Carr P6, Jon Lauzon P7, and Francois Shink playing it cool at the end will take P8. That's a reverse grid pole for race number 3 ahead of Daniel Smith, who will start P9 in race 3, Conor Catella P10, who takes the win in the end for what is the Delta class, and in Gerkensmere P11 ahead of Daniel Sedino, Aaron Lahr in P13, and then Adrian Fedorowski P14. We've got Travis Hoare, who we haven't seen too much of tonight, to be fair, but the privateer coming home P15. That's a P4 in the Delta class ahead of Corey Fluke, Matt Shepka P17, Paul Milalchek P18, and then we have Jesse Butters P19, Brandon Bears P20, and as he heads to the timeline, we've still got a few drivers who need to make it to the timeline here, all bringing it to the end. That's great stuff to see, of course. We do love to see everybody trying to get it home. Brandon Bears there P20, and then Fernando Takahashi making his way up towards turn number 10 right now, and a difficult race for Takahashi, and indeed for the Audi drivers of both Takahashi and Fluke. It is the case they've both had a real baptism by fire at Oulton Park in what is the Audi. None more so, of course, than Takahashi on his debut tonight, but Fluke has been in the walls to a degree. But as we see Takahashi make his way through the final major corner here, it is the case that P21 will be his starting position for race number 3. And it will be a starting position that he'll need to try and gain from as soon as possible. And it'll be Auguste Blondel P22. Blondel not having a happy day. And Micah Hendricks P23. With what is Hansel coming home in at P24, albeit with the retirement. And then, well, now we head into the warm-up here, we should say, for the purposes of what is race number 3. Now, with our drivers being given an opportunity to warm up, they're given a 10-minute break before they go racing once again. It is the case that we will be taking a brief breather, ladies and gentlemen, before we get racing for race number 3 and setting that grid. So we will be back in approximately 5 minutes time for the build up to the racing. So don't go anywhere too soon, you won't want to miss it, but we will be back local time, that's British Summer Time or UTC +1 at 20:44, or in other words, what is there, 16 minutes to 9, and we'll give you all the build up and more as we get ready to go racing one last time at Oulton Park in round number 4 of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 5 on iRacing. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in the closing stages of that 10-minute break for our drivers. Most of our drivers deciding to opt to stay in the pit lane and cool their heads, take that rest break, of course, whereas others such as Micah Hendricks, who have had difficult days today at what is the Oulton Park circuit, looking to get that last-minute practice in to try and deliver. But either way of doing it is the case. We've had two fantastic races and one more to go. And I can see there in the chat, you guys and girls are all enjoying it, whether it is there Francois Shink or Shink F in the YouTube chat saying, I didn't care for P7, give it on, well, it is the case I would presume he didn't care because he was in P8 in race number 2 and wanted to take that reverse grid pole. And of course, Shink will take it, and assuming one there, or Mike Hendricks saying that was a good stuff. Indeed it was. And we also say hello there to Labmob, who was saying that was by it. I have 8 times and I'm not throwing it away at the end lift. We're very sensible there. Very good at 15 minutes, and Logan McKinzie saying perhaps the most impressive 15 minutes of the season so far. And well, I must say, in this case, this season continues to impress, and I'm very grateful to be bringing all the racing action to you, ladies and gentlemen. And well, of course, compliments to the AlphaTauri Challenge organisers for the fact putting on such a brilliant lead. And well, as I drive, well, league I should say rather than lead, but they are really leading the way in terms of the league, I could say. Turn that on around, but with the fact the checker flag has now come out on this warm-up session, it is now time for us to prepare the grid for race number 3. It is the sprint feature, 30 minutes of racing. How will it all go come the finish? Let's find out. Well, it is the case as we wait for our grid to be formed. Of course, it will be Shink who starts on pole for this one. And well, the Beaver Buzz driver starting on a slight uphill gradient. He will be worried a little bit, I suspect, about getting that launch, given the fact that our drivers who started on the front rows, if you remember at Laguna Seca, were really caught out by the uphill gradient of the start line. But as we do look to the blimp camera here, we can see nothing. So instead, we're going to once again look down to the grid, and it is the case here as we have the conveniently placed sign of Oulton Park there, obstructing a little bit of the grid. And I'll see if we can get our cameraman to find a better camera angle, and there they go. It will be Francois Shink who'll be taking our drivers away from that pole position. Will he be leading come the end of turn number 1? Well, he has got Jon Lauzon alongside, and the Beaver Buzz team are very good at working together. But now it is time to wait for the lights. It's lights down away. We're going a little bit of a false start there from Francois Shink. In fact, you could see the car rolling forward slightly, and I think he may have to give some time back there, unless we're mistaken. But Jon Lauzon gets a good start. But look at this with James Carr between the two of them, and he gets his out. Oh, goodness me! And James Carr almost got away with it there, but then he reverses across the road, and that is going to be bedlam further down the order, as we have got a number of drivers to take evasive action. I think James Carr only taking himself, to be fair, but from one breakfast for dinner driver to another, I think it's the case. We've also had one of the other drivers, I think David Bauer's got it very wrong, and well, he's rejoined the circuit. I believe he may have rejoined, but breakfast for dinner having a very difficult start to this race. But Jon Lauzon, meanwhile, just getting away with it, and that was so unfortunate for James Carr. It was looking as though he was going to part the seas like Moses and make a double move for the lead right at the start, which I don't think anybody would have seen coming, but it wasn't to be with that contact with Shink. But Shink has held on to P2 in the end, so perhaps he hasn't had an impediment for that full start that we saw the car roll. But Robert Abrams, meanwhile, having to go round the outside here of Giovanni Romano, and he does so, and Romano really making that difficult. But in the end, it is the case Robert Abrams showing that he's got the metal to roll through, and now it's the case Jerome Bagillo's trying to do the same here, going outside to inside into turn number 10 they go, and as they do, Romano's just going to simply try and hang around the outside because he can in that Honda. He's got the brakes about hanging the car around the outside and the confidence, and that's the one thing with Romano, he's just not intimidated at all. And as they make the way down towards turn number 11, well, Bagillos has to fight another day. He has to back out as Daniel Smith takes a bit of grass there on what is the apex of turn number 11. It goes wrong for the Torque Steer Racing driver, but that could have been far, far worse as they roll over through, and Francois Shink is into the pits. We've had it confirmed. It is the case. It will be a penalty applied in the pit lane. He has had to come on in. That's very unfortunate for Shink. I think just getting a little bit too eager as Smith goes a bit deep there into the corner of turn number 1. Akatela versus Gurka to be here as they make the way down the hill, and Akatela's going to come on through. And this, of course, is your Delta leader right now. He's up into P. Well, he was P5 for a moment, but then Smith says, no, I'll take that back, thank you very much. And it is the case the two Velocity drivers navigate their differences and make the way up towards turn number 4. But you can see Gurka to be here looking for the moves left, right, and centre. We ride on board with the Torque Steer Racing driver from Turkey, and right now the number 913 driver literally left, right centre. It's almost as if he's in a boxing match here, trying to wave past the guard of Acatella, but there's no way through at the moment. We're hearing that Brandon Vez has gone to the pit. Something has gone very wrong for Brandon Vez out of the circuit, and Shink is only just leaving the pit lane now. He's gone all the way down to P21. It is not a happy day for Francois Shink in race number 3, but Gerkentvir, who will ride on board with it, he's trying to have a happy day. He's trying to look for that move into the inside, but he's had to lift off there before getting into turn number 7. I think that was wise there to lift off so early, in the fact he hasn't got too much pressure from behind in the form of Adrian Fedorowski. And in terms of where Fedorowski is, here he is as we look from the rear of Gerkentvir's car now, and in his case Fedorowski there, your Delta driver running in P8. He's your second place Delta driver on the circuit. Well, right now we're only a tenth of the way through, we're only 3 minutes in, but still plenty to come here as we see that Gerkentvir definitely trying to deliver on what is that P7 as he rolls his way into turn number 11. And as he does, we can take you through the order as it currently stands afterwards the opening 2 laps of racing. Well, as we look from the rear of Jon Lauzon's car here, it is Lauzon who leads to Beaver Buzz by an advantage of 1.5 seconds from Robert Abrams, but Abrams definitely now starting to close up, taking 2 tenths out of Lauzon on that lap. Then it is Giovanni Romano in P3, followed by Jerome Virgilaz in P4, and then we have a gap back to Daniel Smith in P5. Really the best of the rest right now outside our top 4, and trying to bring the rest of the field with him, as we see then Connor Acatella, your Delta leader in P6, being hounded by Gerkentvir in P7, then Adrian Fedorowski in P8, as we see a slowdown being applied there for Micah Hendricks. So I think it's the case that Mike Hendricks is a lap down, in fact. So Hendricks, in fact, 2 laps down as we hear it now. So it is the case that Hendricks moving out of everybody's way there and just trying to get the car on home. But Fedorowski in P8, Aaron Lahr P9, followed by Corey Flute in P10, and the Audi driver here trying to hold on to a top 10 finish, but he's got David Bauer behind him. Of course, David Bauer, the second of the 2 breakfast for dinner drivers to have an incident on the open lap. We saw him get it very wrong at turn number 3 off camera. He just disappeared off the camera, but he started to get it wrong on camera, and it is the case meanwhile James Carr, the driver who lost it all at turn number 1, as there's a whack to the back of Corey Fluke, and Fluke is knocked wide there as he rolls his way on out, and it was a tap to the rear, but just one tap can upset the car, and Fluke will drop 2 places, and we see Shepka makes it 3 places, so Fluke drops to P13 with Shepka up to P12, and ahead of him in P11 is Daniel Sedino. Then we have Fernando Takahashi in P14, followed by Paul Malalchek in P15, and then we do have Logan McKinzie P16, but we'll come to that in a second. In fact, you can see here Fernando Takahashi having to go defensive here, and the 2 rookies as of this season really going toe-to-toe here. They're enjoying battling one another, and I think we've got a rivalry building here between Takahashi and Malalchek as they make their way out of turn number 12 and across the timing line. You see Takahashi's not letting this go, defending hard on the inside and really committing to defense so early on, and behind them we can see it is the case that we've got James Carr making the move on Travis Hoare there, and Travis Hoare being muscled a little bit wide, it has to be said, but I think James Carr just wants to try and get back up the order. He knows he's got the pace in the car. But meanwhile, we look back to Malalchek and Takahashi, and Malalchek trying to go around the outside at turn number 3. When do these 2 stop? Well, it's going to end one of 2 ways, I reckon it's the case. One of them's going to back out, alternatively they're both going to go off circuit, and we don't want them to go off circuit. We know they can continue to battle like this because the respect being shown is fantastic. But hold up a second, that's Connor Acatella into the wall there at what is turn number 5. Well, the entry at turn number 5 was just parked up by the wall, and he's having to let everybody through. Acatella's been in the walls, and Daniel Smith has jumped to the pits. I wonder if the 2 Veloster drivers have had a coming together, because it is the case that Acatella brings it back onto the circuit. Unfortunately, we can't see, but what this does now mean in a season first for him, Adrian Fedorowski, your QZ Motorsports driver, is now your leader in the Delta class here at Oulton Park in race number 3. And well, I think for him, this is going to feel a very strange sensation in the fact that normally it's been the Connor Acatella show at the front of the Delta class, but now it's Fedorowski who takes the spotlight, and look who he's racing with. He's racing with Gerkentvir, who he's on the back of, to be fair, but also he's got to deal with Aaron Lahr, and also Dave Bauer behind him. Fedorowski's going to try and go around the outside of Ozdemir, but I think he's overcooked under braking there, and that depression in the braking zone just causing the car to understeer away from him, and now he will have the breakfast for dinner driver of David Bauer trying to come through behind the Torque Steer Racing driver Aaron Lahr as they make their way down. Oh, goodness me, and David Bauer, they're getting the elbows out once again, and breakfast for dinner, well, it is the case. I think they're in a hurry for dinner because they're getting their elbows out to get to the front of the queue, and well, in this case, the breakfast is points as they make their way on down through turn number 3 once again. Fedorowski knows all he's got to do is bring the car home at this rate, but now he has a bit of a complication because he's no longer alone as the leader of the Delta class. He has got Daniel Sedino behind, and right now the Blue Flag Motorsports driver in the Hyundai Elantra would love to to take a win in the Delta class here at Oulton Park. There's no doubt about that as he rolls his way through at turn number 5. As they come through the right-hander here, they all run in succession for the time being. I think Salino right now will be thinking about what opportunities lie ahead, and we've got a lot of time to go, to be fair. We're not even 10 minutes in, we're not even a third of the way, but there's been plenty of action already. And speaking of a driver who's seen a lot of action, and it's not action that he's been looking forward to, Logan McKinzie has had a difficult start to this race. Down in P13, he goes to the move for P12 versus Takahashi here. But you can see as they drag race their way to turn 7, it is the case Takahashi not giving up in that Audi and fighting for it. And I think he wants to try and keep McKinzie between himself and Malachek behind, for the simple reason that it is one of the cases where Malachek really putting that pressure on, but as they roll the way through turn number 10 right now, it is the case that Logan McKinzie finds himself sandwiched between the two Delta drivers and the Alpha driver just trying to get a move on, and James Carr in a similar situation. It is the case, he looks up the inside here, it's going to be a late move for P14, and well, he does pressure his rival there to go a bit deep into the corner. Malachek gets it wrong under braking. Now I think worried about the potential contact, but James Carr definitely being aggressive here, and well, aggression is permitted up to a point, but he's got to be careful because the aggression is working out so far. But I do wonder if he'll come up against the driver who will see what's coming, and it may be the case he gets caught out. Speaking of it getting caught out, Fernando Takahashi takes the grass there after a difficult run out of turn number 1 and loses 3 places, and well, the privateer having a difficult run, but he's hooked back onto the back of his rival from earlier, and P15 is Takahashi. But meanwhile, we look from P15 to P6, and here is Aaron Lyon. It's a good thing we do so, because immediately as soon as we do, David Bauer literally says, well, I'm going up the inside there into turn number 5, and well, David Bauer getting the move done. But as we ride on board the gearbox here, it'll be the case that he gets the initial run through turn 6, but now the tables return, of course, in the fact that in this drag race down towards turn number 7, it's the driver in the draft who will gain the momentum, but it's not enough here for Aaron Lyon. He has to wait and simply stay in formation as they roll away through the right-hander of 7. But you can see there the fact that Bauer went a little bit deep into the corner by comparison and actually end up picking up a bit of understeer, so I wonder if he's feeling a bit of pressure. And also on top of that, keep in mind our Elantra drivers, if they push hard now, they won't have the front tyres in particular at the end of the race, which they'll so desperately crave, whereas the Velosters and also the Civic Type R's and the RS3s will have the ability to use those front tyres a little bit more. So Bauer's got to be careful here, and I wonder if he's trying to just back the car off slightly in order to do a bit of car preservation. Well, only he can tell us, of course, that he's out on circuit charging on around. But meanwhile, looking from the battle to be in the top 5, Gurkhan Tavir, of course, your P5 driver at the front of this field. It is the case we need to head to the very front of the field. Well, we were going to, but then Gurkhan Tavir going a bit deep there, and we're going to see a change of position here for P5. That's Dan Bauer now coming on through as it looks so to me there. Oh, goodness me, and a wheel onto the grass and a break into turn number 3, and Gurkhan Tavir gets it all wrong, and the Torxteer racing driver, who was having a great race, he now has to rejoin, and he rejoins all the way down in P14, and that is not going to be a happy moment for Torxteer racing. It was looking very good, and meanwhile his teammate here, Shepka, is trying to hunt further up the order. He's currently in P8, he's got the pressure of Daniel Salino behind, and also their teammate there of Aaron Lyon in P6, but Torxteer racing definitely having a stronger day, perhaps one of their strongest days of the season so far, but they're still hitting some bumps in the road as they go, and Gurkhan Tavir literally showing what those bumps in the road look like in terms of getting it wrong as he came down through at turn number 2 into 3. But we were going to cut to the front of the field, and now we do, and here is your race leader, and we'll take you through the top 10 as it currently stands. Jon Lauzon leading this race of Beaver Buzz, but he has got Robert Abrams closing behind him gradually, and Robert Abrams every lap taking a tenth to 2 tenths out of our leader. The gap when we saw them on lap number 3 was approximately 1.5 seconds. It has come down to half that distance now to 7.5 tenths, and Robert Abrams definitely trying to continue to increment it down little by little as they go on to their 8th lap of the circuit under race conditions in this sprint feature. Meanwhile, Giovanni Romano, P3 here, staying well within touch of the top 2 and keeping the momentum going, and I think he'll try and come on strong late on in the race in the final 20 minutes, the final 10 minutes we should really say. And then we do have Jerome Bajulas here in P4, and the Beaver Buzz driver right now also staying on guard, albeit it is the case, of course, Bajulas involved in a few knocks at the very start of the race, I think just trying to settle down into a rhythm. And then David Bauer in P5 here, really the best of the rest right now. And I think David Bauer has got vengeance on his mind. Not necessarily in terms of taking drivers out, but he'll want to get right back up there, given his attempt at taking the race lead at the start, much like James Carr. But it's the case that breakfast for dinner really hindered, and Bauer less impacted by comparison when he got it wrong at turn number 3, compared to Carr, of course, who was sent off at turn number 1. But it is the case he's really putting that momentum down. And right now, he is the fastest driver out there, other than our top 4. But meanwhile, Aaron Lahr in P6 here, the fastest of the Talksteer Racing drivers, or the lead Talksteer Racing driver really in this race, and also the fastest of the 3 of them in terms of lap times. He's trying to go hunting after a top 5 finish, with Adrian Fedorowski continuing to lead your Delta class as he makes his way out to turn number 7 and up towards 10. And the QC Motorsport driver here having a very strong race, it must be said, in that Honda, ahead of his Honda rival there in the Alpha class of Matt Shepka. And Shepka right now starting to breathe down the neck of Fedorowski, and I think he'll be looking for the move in the next few laps, but they're keeping close together here, and I think they're trying to avoid fighting where possible. But Daniel Sedino meanwhile in at P9, and then we do have completing the top 10 Logan McKinzie, who after a difficult start to his race is trying to close it up. But meanwhile, James Carr, they're getting the move on Corey Fluke up the inside there into turn number 11, just creeping onto the camera angle. But Corey Fluke now under pressure in that P12 from Paul Mikolajczyk in P13. But we must look from the battle for P12 all the way back to the battle for P15, and we can see that Gus Blondell going a bit deep into turn number 1, and Fernando Takahashi obliging up the inside. But as they get themselves back up to speed at the front of the field, this is Jon Lauzon, and look who he's now got really hounding his back. It's Robert Abrams here, and as we ride on board with Robert Abrams, the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver here, now on the attack. He's going on the offensive in the charge down towards turn number 7, and Lauzon obliges in terms of defending hard as possible here on that inside, and Abrams will pin him to that inside line. It'll be the case he'll try and go round the outside into turn number 7, and as they battle on the brakes, it's a little bit of a rub between the 2 drivers there, but as they head up the hill, as they say, rubbing is racing, and as they come charging on up towards turn number 10, it's the case that Robert Abrams there gets the move done. Bold, brave and brilliant, and that's why Robert Abrams is leading the championship overall going into this round. And as they make their way through turn number 10, you can imagine that Robert Abrams, I think, will be giving himself a little bit of a private pat on the back there, given the fact that that was a very brave move just before the halfway point of the race, but he's got it done. Now can he pull away from Jon Lauzon before Giovanni Romano comes into this race as the race goes deeper and deeper, because as you can see there, Romano is not too far behind and is staying with the top 2, matching them on pace. And as they make the way through turn number 1, it is the case that right now the top 3 continuing to run away with things, as Joan Bajula's there and a little bit of a lonely P4 right now. We'll be thinking, what do I have to do to stay with them? Well, what he's got to do is try and find 2 or 3 more tenths a lap to really bring that gap down, or at least get himself within slipstream. But meanwhile, this is Shepka up the inside of Fedorowski through 2 and onto the outside of 3, but Fedorowski there backs out, and I think that was quite smart from Adrian Fedorowski. The only thing he's got to now deal with is the fact that he doesn't have a buffer zone between himself and Daniel Sedino there, and they'll be battling for the win in the Delta class for what is P8 over on circuit right now, as they make the way through the left-hander there of turn number 4 and up towards 5. And as they do, we can see it's case Sedino taking a little bit of a peek there through the corner, but he doesn't find it this time. And as they make the way on now, it's getting closer and closer as they go charging down towards turn number 7. Will Sedino have the run for the Blue Flag Motorsports, or will it be the case that the QC Motorsport driver Fedorowski is able to hold on in the draft of Shepka ahead? Well, I think Shepka's helping Fedorowski here keep one step ahead for the time being, but it could swing either way as they roll their way through turn number 7 and go charging up towards turn number 10. And as they do this time, well, we can see Daniel Sedino definitely really feeling that encouragement there to go hunting after the win. The fact that he's had a difficult season so far. There's been some highs, but there's also been some major lows, and right now I think for him it's the case he wants to try and end the racing in round number 4 on the ultimate highs. We're hearing that Corey Fluke and Fernando Takahashi have both had a major incident together, and Gus Blondell was well involved in that. It's the case that all 3 drivers have had to jump to the pit as we continue to focus on the battle for P8 here, and well, behind Logan McKinzie in that P10, he'll be looking to try and get into this fight if he can a bit later on as James Carr comes into the pits. And I wonder if James Carr has picked up a penalty, a drive-through penalty. But meanwhile, Shepka here, well, it's the case that Shepka's found his way past Aaron Lahr. Well, Lahr's had a slowdown surely coming out of what is turn number 1, but with that slowdown or whatever's happened, unless he's just run very wide. In fact, I've had confirmation it wasn't off track. He ran wide and lost a lot of time through turn number 1. It is the case. We see Fredorowski now under pressure here from Sedino. Sedino on the inside into turn number 4. But Fredorowski, if he can hang it around the outside and up to the inside, will have the move under braking into what is turn number 5. But he doesn't find it this time as our timing tower gets a little bit glitched there, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, it'll fix itself eventually. But it is the case that Daniel Sedino takes that P8, takes the lead of what is the Delta class, and well, moves up to that P8 position. Now, can he break away, or will Fredorowski come on back? That will be the big question as they go charging on through. As they make their way down towards turn number 7 here, we do say hello to Rob Abrams in the YouTube chat there, who has got the muscle emoji to show that he muscled his way round the outside for the lead of the race. It was a brilliant pass, and we hope you're doing well, Rob. But in the meantime, as we continue to look back to our screens, it is the case that now Logan McKinzie, as we ride aboard, will be thinking of trying to do something similar for Yellow Flag Motorsports, albeit he's not battling for the lead. He's battling for P9 and P8 as he comes charging down in towards turn number 11. But as he heads into the braking zone here, is the case he has not got two simple and straightforward drivers to make his way past. He's got two Delta drivers who are battling for the win in their class, and will feel that every point matters. We see McKinzie there takes a peek to the inside, trying to get Fedorowski to move off the racing line, but Fedorowski does not take the bait, but he does make a bit of a ham sandwich of what is turn number 1 in terms of there getting the car to step out a little bit too much, and McKinzie will try to close up a bit more, but it's very difficult unless you're fully alongside in the run to 2 to go for the move into 3. But you can see Fedorowski really struggling now as they come through 3, and this is where McKinzie will try and draft his way on through. He's come out the toe, he's going to look for a move up the inside, but just not close enough. Here's the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver. He has to be patient here as they roll their way through 4 and up into 5. He's going to go for it. This is very bold stuff here from what is Logan McKinzie. He's seen the door, he's opened it wide, and he goes on through to take P9. But as they head on through towards turn number 7, it's the long run, and we would imagine the Elantra will have enough in order to be able to outpace the Honda. And indeed, you can see he's gradually pulling ahead. He'll be able to get back onto that racing line just before the braking zone. And Logan McKinzie there, where it has to be said, whilst he may not be up the front compared to his teammate having all the glory in terms of picking up the big points, he does get big brownie points for a move like that. It was the case. I don't think Fedorowski saw that coming, but in the end Logan McKinzie has made it stick as he rolls his way into turn number 10, and as he does, he's up to P9. But as they roll their way on through here, we look from that battle for P9. You can see just how much Daniel Sedino in fact has got away from the battle for P9 with everything that's happened there. We now look all the way up to what is our leaders, and well, it is the case that Robert Abrams, who leads at this time, well, he does have Jon Lauzon hunting him on down, making his way up towards what is turn number 5 very shortly. And Jon Lauzon, to be fair, as we say hello to him in the YouTube chat there, it is the case that right now really looking to go on that offensive for the lead of this race. 4 tenths is the gap, and whilst Robert Abrams got ahead initially, you can see Lauzon there definitely trying to take every little bit of width for turn number 4. I think that the car almost creeping away for him, to be fair, but as they make the way on out, that shows you how hard he's trying to push on here. But I think for Wes Lauzon, if he goes too deep there too often, it may be the case the course comes back to bite him, and he won't want that. There's no doubt about that. But as he charges on down this back straight, Giovanni Romano starting to fall back a little bit now. He's fallen back to a second off Lauzon. I wonder if Romano is now starting to feel a little bit of pinch on the tyre wear as well. Perhaps he's had to really push it hard to try and stay with his top 2, and the car's just not giving him what he wants anymore in terms of that lap time. But Lauzon and Abrams here definitely really trying to make that pace. But the thing for them, of course, is they are starting to really wear those front tyres down, and they've got to be careful, of course, because we saw at Laguna Seca in the opening sprint round of the season how it was the case that as the time went on, the Hyundai Elantra drivers just really fell off, particularly in those last 5 to 7 minutes. It's the case that they've got to worry about that here, and Oulton Park is not a tyre for any circuit. It is a circuit which really batters the tyres, and right now, speaking of taking a battering, well, I think Daniel Sedino's hopes here of taking at that P7 of Aaron Lahr. Oh, grinders, Aaron Lahr gets it wrong there into the braking zone for turn number 11. Oh, I think his base has received a battering, because it is the case that now they drag race their way across the timeline. But look at that, McKinzie in the background taking a look to try and make it 3 wide, but it's a bit too far back there. I think he was just seeing what was going on, taking a peek round them, but it's the case that Sedino there up the inside into turn 1. A nice move, and Logan McKinzie now says, I think I'm going to take a bit of this as well. Well, he doesn't quite go for it as late as he did on Fedorowski at turn 5 onto what was Sedino there at turn number 3. I think that would have been a bit too brave, but as they make the way out to turn 3, it is the case that where Aaron Lahr has dropped to place, now he has McKinzie salivating at the prospect of taking that P8 off of him. But it should be pointed out we have had a number of retirements in this race due to drivers being involved in incidents. We're not sure whether it was of their own doing or with other drivers or who was the culprit, if it was a multi-car collision. But we've lost Gus Blondell, Brandon Bears, Daniel Smith, Wiley Cox, Steve Ansell, and also what is Justin Rose. And unfortunately, Justin Rose just not taken to the circuit for all 3 races. I think they had a problem with his Hyundai and he's had to try and get it repaired, but they just have not been able to get the car repaired. But speaking of repairing that position loss, it is the case that you can see that Aaron Lauzon trying to take that little peek into turn number 7. In return, he's actually lost a bit of room through the corner. McKinzie here, surely he's not going to try and go inside to outside in this run so late on in the race. Those tyres are going to be worn shot, but he's going for it to McKinzie. But you can see there how the car just would not turn in to corner apex, and McKinzie backing it off before it was too late. But in terms of backing off, what that means is now Adrian Federowski will be literally all over the back of him and saying in his cockpit, you remember me? Remember how you got me at turn 5? Now I'm coming back for you, as they make the way out to turn number 11. Federowski not close enough here as they charge down towards turn number 1, but as they do, he's got enough pressure on McKinzie, and McKinzie, I think, both going slightly defensive, but also trying to take the peak on Aaron Lahr to try and get Lahr to think he's coming for the move into 1. It is the case that McKinzie being caught between a rock and a hard place, but meanwhile, speaking of having to try and defend the lead of this race like a rock right now, well, Robert Abrams, he still leads by what is just over 4.5 tenths, but Jon Lauzon is not giving in that pursuit. Travis Hoare just jumped to the pit lane. We're not sure exactly what's happened. We hear Corey Fluxel's had an off circuit, but Corey Fluke still running P17. But right now, Robert Abrams definitely having to hold on. And Giovanni Romano, well, we said he was falling back a bit earlier. I think it's the case he may have just had 1 or 2 laps where he's let the tyres cool down a little bit. And now he's going back on the offensive, because you can see he's brought that gap down to Lauzon. Now only to what is 6 tenths per second. And we are in the final 7 minutes of the race. So this is where we should see the Honda really transition now into having the pace over Lauzon and Abrams. Indeed, that last lap, Romano was 2 tenths faster than Lauzon, and he was also a tenth faster than Robert Abrams. So I think we are going to find that as these laps now count down, we've only got about 4 more laps when he comes across the timeline this time. It is the case. Now Romano's really going to have to push. And speaking of pushing, it'll be the same, of course, for Wadis Federowski at the back of this group of 4, battling for P7. It's Daniel Sedino at the head of the camera. Aaron Lahr's the focus of our cameraman's attention in the green Talksteer Racing Hyundai Elantra, but behind him Logan McKinzie all over the back of him once again, and Adrian Federowski right at the back of this group thinking about how he can get into the mix. As Aaron Lahr here goes defensive down towards turn number 1. McKinsie's going to be on the outside there. McKinzie looking for the cutback. He's going to get Lahr to go deep on the inside, but it's not going to work, as McKinzie will now simply try to go all the way around the outside to inside here, and as he does, he gets a nice move up the inside into turn number 3, and I don't see Aaron Lahr defending this or any way he can defend it given the wear on the tyres. And it is the case that Logan McKinzie gets that P8 done in classic touring car style, getting the cutback run down towards turn number 3 from 1 to 3. And as they make the way through turn number 4, it is the case now McKinzie having to chase after Daniel Sedino for what I think will be the last place he can gain today, given the gap to P6, unless there is a major error by one of our leaders. But speaking of an error by one of our leaders, I think it may be the case that Robert Abrams has just had a mistake somewhere on circuit. So as we ride on board his gearbox here, looking back at Jon Lauzon, it's the case that gap has gone from half a second to only 1.5 tenths, and that is a faceful there of a Hyundai Elantra as they make their way out of turn number 10 and down towards turn number 11. And as they head into the heavy braking zone here, Robert Abrams is going to have to defend, and while championship leader is not going to have it all his own way, as they make the way out of the corner and to the timeline, 5 minutes to go, plus the final lap. And Jon Lauzon, I think he's been trying to protect the car as long as possible as Jon Lauzon, in the fact you can just see how he's now all over the back of our leader. And well, can Lauzon potentially upset the apple cart here for Yellow Flag Motorsports? We can see he takes a peek there on outside to inside through 2 into 3. It wasn't to be. He has to wait. He has to be patient. And Lauzon has a major opportunity here. He just needs to wait for when it's the right time to strike. But if he can keep this pressure on, Robert Abrams, of course, a very resilient driver. We've seen that since the season opener at Belle Isle. But it is the case that everybody has their limits. Can Lauzon find Abrams' limit, or will it be the case that in the end, could Giovanni Romano here also third party this opportunity for the win in race number 3 at Oulton Park? It's not long to go to find out. 4 minutes left on the clock, plus that final lap as they head down the back straight. Romano here, I think, just waiting in the wings, albeit he's a bit far back to be waiting in the wings. You can see Lauzon literally following the footsteps of Abrams. Abrams left, right and centre down that back straight. Little weaves and bobs here and there, which are legal. Those small weaves as Lauzon there almost loses it on the exit of turn number 7, taking to the grass slightly and then almost tipping the car on the curb. But it is the case, the bit of a buzz drive, that shows you how hard he's having to push to put the pressure on Abrams here. He is not giving up his Lauzon. He wants this win, but now he's got something far worse behind him, and that is a salivating, what is a newcomer to the series who wants that P2. And Giovanni Romano right now is saying, right, now's my chance. You've made your mistake, I'm coming for it. Will we see a swap in positions of P2? Will Abrams be given a breather here with only a couple more laps on the clock? Well, as they make the way into turn number 1, they've got a bit of traffic in front of them there, and that I do believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Jesse Bodas, who's running in P16 as they charge him down. Bodas being the next driver to be lapped out on circuit, with Takahashi, Fluke, and Hendricks all what are effectively 1 or more laps down, as we see Bodas there decides to take the rallycross line to yield to the blue flags. He doesn't want to be in this battle for lead, understandably so, but right now Robert Abrams being given a lifeline here, given the P2 and P3 are battling for position. And I think he will take it with both hands and try to run away with proceedings as they head through turn number 5. But as they head out of the hairpin once again, we look back here to what is the battle for P8, or really the disappearing battle for P8. And here is your leader in the Delta class, and that is Daniel Sedino, and he'll be very happy for Blue Flag Motorsports at this point, chasing after Logan McKinzie for P7. But it's really Aaron Lahr right now, who in P9, the Torque Steer Racing driver, trying to keep ahead of Adrian Fedorowski and also Paul Mikolajczyk as they make their way through turn number 5 and down towards 7. And as they come charging on through, it is the case that right now the debutant here of Mikolajczyk really trying to put that pressure on for P10. And really this is battling for P2 in the Delta class podium. He's in P3 at the moment, but he wants that P2 of Adrian Fedorowski. But Fedorowski, to be fair, really has risen to the occasion with Acatella having that incident at turn number 5 early on in this race. Fedorowski may not be leading, Daniel Sedino has taken that lead off of him, but we cannot take away from the fact that Fedorowski really enjoying the racing here at Oulton Park and has not really put a foot wrong in race number 3 here. It's the case, he's been in a bit of a difficult situation with some of the battles with Alpha peers, but I think he's learning from those, and he's definitely showing that he's got what it takes here to be charging on and holding onto a top 10 finish, one of his very first top 10 finishes of the season, unless my memory serves me incorrectly. But as he rolls his way out to turn number 11, what could be a potential dream finish to his time at Oulton Park here in season 5, he's still got a little bit longer to go. Indeed, I believe we have got 2 more laps, including the one they've just gone on to. Robert Abrams, your leader. Meanwhile, we cut to our leader as Gurkan Demir into the pit lane, and that I believe is for a drive-through penalty. He will lose a P12 and he will drop down to P16, sorry, P15 we should say. And that is very unfortunate for Gurkan Demir in the fact that those instant points really racking up little by little, and it is a low instant point count of what is 9. And that's, of course, to dissuade our drivers from making heavy contact, already abusing those track limits. And whilst it is the case that abusing track limits at Oulton Park is going to see you marrying the car to the grass, every so often our drivers do go wide, they do pick up those points. But right now, the only points that Robert Abrams will be thinking about is championship points. And meanwhile, Giovanni Romano definitely trying to make a point to Jon Lauzon as they roll their way through the right-hander at turn number 10. Is this the final lap out? I think it's going to be very close. If we're going to get one more lap as we see them make the way down into the final corner, I think it will literally be the case. It will be the checkered flag, and as Robert Abrams comes out the final corner, he's not had it all his own way, but he's going to bring it home, for he takes the win for Yellow Flag Motorsports in race number 3 at Oulton Park. Does Robert Abrams ahead of Jon Lauzon in P2, and it'll be Giovanni Romano coming home P3 to wrap up the podium ahead of Jerome Bajulais in P4, David Bauer P5, recovering to P5 after a difficult start to his race, and then Matt Shepka will take home P6, followed by Logan McKinzie, who holds on to P7 in the end. A great recovery from Logan McKinzie. Daniel Sedino crosses the line, and you can see how happy he is. The Blue Flag Motorsports driver has just made it a win at Oulton Park in race number 3 in the Delta class. P8 overall, Aaron Lahr P9, then Adrian Fedorowski comes on home in P10, and Paul Mikolajczyk coming home P11, and that completes the Delta podium there of what is Fedorowski and Mikolajczyk. And then we have Conor Acatella, who recovered to P12, and then a brilliant recovery drive there from the privateer ahead of James Carr P13, Gurkan Demir P14 in the end, and then Francois Shink P15. A difficult race for Shink after what was that jump start and also the instant through turn number 1. And then we can see Jesse Bodas coming home P16 in the number 100 car ahead of Fernando Takahashi. And well, Takahashi has definitely had a difficult way of being welcomed into the racing here at Oulton Park in the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 5, but still plenty to watch out for from the 998 driver. Corey Fluke P18, Travis Hall P19, and then Micah Hendricks P20, and Auguste Blondel, Brandon Bears, Daniel Smith, Wiley Cox, and also Steve Hansel with Justin Rhodes. Classified P26 there, but not able to take to the grid for the purposes of any of the 3 races, which is very unfortunate. But as our drivers now make their way back to the pits, Giovanni Romano, the Team Hugh Just driver, the privateer, very happy with his performances, I think, today. Definitely one to watch out for, really coming alive in the racing. But it is the case that he's only just started, and we'll have to wait and see what he's able to do later on in the season, as we see most of our drivers parked on up. And it is the case that now, as we look to the scenic view, the only other thing we can do is now give you an update on the championship standings. So after what is 4 rounds of racing then in Season 5 of the Alpha Touring Challenge for 2022, it is the case that Robert Abrams now has extended his lead at the top with a brilliant day of racing at what is the Oulton Park circuit. Whilst the gap between himself and Francois Shink was only 2 points going into tonight, that gap now has extended dramatically to 42 points. But that, of course, is what happens when you score big in the sprint races. In the sprint rounds, it is the case there are a lot of points up for grabs, and Shink will be looking to come back strong in our feature race round in a week's time. Jon Lauzon now up to P3 ahead of Logan McKinzie. It is the case the 2 drivers have swapped places there with a 7-point advantage going to Jon Lauzon. But do keep in mind that these 2 very different disciplines of driving. Jon Lauzon really coming on fast in terms of the pace. Meanwhile, Logan McKinzie, whilst he may not have been quote-unquote as fast in terms of 1-lap pace, he wasn't afraid to make the moves and also make those recovery drives where he needed to. And there's going to be quite the rivalry there to be in that P3. And then we have Jerome Bajulaz in P5, gaining a place over David Bauer. It is the case now, a point ahead of David Bauer, with David Bauer having a difficult day today. And it must be said, if only he could have made that move stick at the start of race number 3. I would have called it out right there and then. It would have been move of the season to part the season to turn number 1, but it wasn't to be. In fact, that was James Carr, my apologies, and David Bauer getting it wrong later on the lap. I'm getting my names confused there for breakfast or dinner. I think it's the case I might need to have some dinner after this. But meanwhile, David Bauer definitely in that P6 position, and then James Carr with the attempt at the Moses manoeuvre, but he's gained 2 places for his performances today. He's now up to P7 ahead of Matthew Shepka, who's dropped a place down to P8 on 137 points, and it's Connor Acatella who continues to gain, does the Delta driver, our Delta class leader, come the end of this round, now up to P9 on 132 points, 3 clear of Gurkan Demir, who completes the top 10, and on those 129 points, he stands what is 18 points clear of P11, as we look from P11 to P20, with Daniel Smith now up to P11 after a good day of racing, albeit not the way he wanted it to be. for what was Daniel Smith in the end, and in Justin Rhodes losing 4 places today after a difficult day, and of course not able to take to the grid for any of the races with issues with the car. Mike Hendricks losing a place given the fact that he's had a difficult day at Oulton Park after that brilliant performance at Fuji, but you can imagine he will be back with a bang next time out. And then Wiley Cox staying in P14 on 62 points, but he is being closed up very rapidly, and we can see the newcomer there in P15 of Giovanni Romano after his first round getting some huge points on the board ahead of Auguste Blondel, and then we have Travis Hoare, Adrian Fedorowski, Michael McLeod, and Daniel Sedina, who complete the top 20, albeit McLeod not taking part tonight, losing 4 places as a result. Then, looking outside the top 20 in P21, we have Aaron Lahr, who moves up to P21 there on what is now 40 points. 9 clear of Corey Fluke. Corey Fluke having a mixed day of racing, and it didn't quite go his way in any of the races, it must be said. And Eric Statzer not taking to the grid tonight. As a result, moves down to P23. Jonathan Stroll as well, down to P24 on 24 points, ahead of Jesse Bodas based on result countback, who's in P25. And then Paul Mikolajczyk in P26 there on 22 points on his debut. A good start for the debutant, but we'll wait to see how his progress continues as we head into each and every round. Scotty Lund down to P27, Brandon Verds P28, Dom Savio P29. We hope to see him return to the grid soon. And then we have Fernando Takahashi on his debut, picking up 10 points up to P30. Then outside the top 30, but not to be forgotten about, down to our 34th driver in this series, we have Sean Good, Spencer Cockayne, Steve Hansel, and Harhays and Eager, who complete the standings. Well, we've had 34 drivers register, and if you're sat there right now thinking about how you can potentially sign up, well, stay tuned just a little bit more, and we can tell you all about that right at the end. But now we come to the team standings, and it is the case that we can see Beaver Buzz are still in the lead, but only by 3 points ahead of Yellow Flag Motorsports, and Breakfast for Dinner are not too far behind. Whilst there is a gap there of what is effectively 37 points, 37 points can be overhauled very easily in a single night of racing, so our top 3 right now could not be closer, and particularly the top 2. And then Talk Steer Racing best the rest on 288 points, with Blue Flag Motorsports building more points tonight, and then we have QZ Motorsports P6 and Gasparilla Motorsport in P7. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to wrap up, and thank you very much for watching. Now, if you did enjoy the show tonight and you want to know more about the Alpha Touring Challenge or the ATC Championship on iRacing, then why not check out our official website? That's alphatouringchallenge.wordpress.com. Alternatively, you can always head to our Discord. The link there is available on screen. And if you are sat there right now in your sim racing chair, or indeed in your office chair, or on your couch thinking, I'd love to be out on circuit with these guys, I love touring cars, and I've got touring cars on iRacing, well, do head to our website, alternatively to our Discord, where you can get in touch with the organisers and find out how you can sign up today. And well, I don't think I need to convey any more than the race it does itself. It's the case we're only 4 rounds in. We've got championship fights up and down the field, and the racing could not be getting better round in, round out. But speaking of the rounds, it is the case now. Our drivers have packed up their bags and they're heading from the British countryside to Monza, the citadel of speed, or the cathedral of speed as it's also known in Italy. And well, what's a more synonymous franchise name other than Monza Turn 1 Lap 1? Well, it's going to be more than just that. It is going to be fast, it's going to be furious, and who will come out on top in the feature race at Monza in a week's time? Will we bring you all of that in the post-race broadcast on Saturday the 13th of August 2022? But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Alpha Touring Challenge. I've been your host, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, we wish you a great weekend. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.